On the eve of the SATs, I was the academic superstar of Crestwood Academy's senior class. To pay off my parents' debts, I've been forced to accept a scholarship transfer to this gilded cage. And just because I score #1 on the first round of practice exams, Ethan Vance, a perfectionist in all things, saw me as a threat, an eyesore. He didn't hesitate to use every dirty trick in the book to destroy me. I endured it all, my eyes fixed on one goal: acing the SATs and winning the prestigious Blackwood Scholarship. I needed the prize money, and it was my only shot at changing my miserable fate. Then I met Isabella Rossi, the flawless star athlete from our sister school. She actually asked me out. I drowned myself in what I thought was love, losing all focus. Until the day the final SAT scores were released. That was the day I fell into hell. "You worthless piece of trash," Ethan sneered. "Did you really think you could climb to the top?" His left arm was wrapped around my beautiful girlfriend, Isabella. In his right hand, he held a ceramic urn, tipping my grandfather's ashes into a dog bowl. A wolfish dog with blood-red eyes shot forward, licking the bowl clean. No, blood streamed down my legs from where they'd broken them. I clawed my way across the floor, dragging my shattered body toward the bowl. Pathetic. Like a maggot, Ethan scoffed. Just 3 more feet. My eyes were stretched wide, refusing to blink. The last fleck of ash was licked away. "Get rid of him," Ethan said, waving a hand in disgust. 2 hulking men grabbed me and tossed me into an industrial trash compactor like a sack of garbage. Crunch! The alloy steel press slammed down. Shredded flesh and blood splattered against the metal walls. "Grandpa, if there's a next life, I swear I'll give you a good one, and I'll send them all to hell." When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day the first practice exam scores were posted. This time, I would be the one to strike first. A loud buzz flooded my ears. The glare of fluorescent lights. An ornate, vaulted ceiling that probably cost more than my family's entire apartment building. The air smelled of expensive perfume, not the rotten stench of the sanitation plant. I snapped my head down. An exam paper was spread across my desk. A bright red score seared my eyes. 99%. First practice SAT, evidence-based reading and writing. #1. I'm back. My gaze shot to the center of the front row. Ethan Vance. That flawlessly handsome, monstrously twisted trust fund kid. He was staring at his own paper. 98%. #2. Only a single percentage point separated us. His back was ramrod straight. His fingertips, pinching the edge of the paper, were white from the pressure. Perfect. Everything in his life had to be perfect. That included being eternally #1. And me, a bug he saw as having crawled out of the projects, had dared to step on his head. I could almost feel the cold rage radiating off him, like a viper, hissing in silence. "Wow, Leo, you're amazing. You actually beat Ethan by a point." The girl in front of me turned around. Her tone was exaggerated, but her eyes held the glint of someone eager to watch a good show. The Cartier bracelet on her wrist flashed, blinding me for a second. A few other students in their custom-tailored school uniforms shot glances my way. A cocktail of shock, contempt, and morbid curiosity. I knew what they were thinking. How does a charity case score #1? Why does he have to even be in the same classroom as us? Did he cheat? Their stares were like needles, pricking at the frayed, faded collar of my old public school jacket, pricking at the pencil case I'd used for 3 years, held together with duct tape, pricking at me, the outsider. But this time, the needles didn't hurt. My heart had already been ground to stone by something far more brutal. Ethan turned his head slightly. His gaze brushed past me. There was no anger, no jealousy, only a profound, chilling indifference. The way you'd look at something that was already dead. I knew. The bullying was about to begin. The bell shrieked, and the classroom erupted. Laughter, roughhousing, kids comparing the latest iPhones and making plans to go to the yacht club on the weekend. I was an island in the middle of their ocean. My fingers gently brushed across the stack of textbooks on my desk. Literature, calculus, physics, and that 99% paper. These are my life. They were the only ladder I had to climb out of the gutter. In my past life, during this very class break, they were turned into a pile of confetti, torn to shreds, page by Ethan's attack dog, Caleb Maddox, a vicious smirk plastered on his face. He had torn them up just like he'd torn up my life. I took a deep breath. My hands moved like lightning. Swipe. I shoved the entire precious stack of books and papers into my desk's lockable drawer. Clicked it shut. Then, I stood up and walked to the teacher's desk at the front. I was the unofficial TA for our English teacher. A few stacks of freshly graded workbooks sat on her desk. She'd asked me to take them back to her office. Last time, I did exactly as I was told. But not this time. I straightened the workbooks, picked up the thickest stack, turned around, and placed it inside my own desk drawer. Shut it, and blocked it with my body. The stack of workbooks was heavy enough, and from a glance, looked just like my textbooks. I'd barely finished when a shadow fell over me. 3 guys. Leading them was Caleb Maddox, Ethan's most loyal dog, decked in designer clothes, hair slicked back with gel, the malice in his eyes completely undisguised. His 2 cronies blocked my escape. Well, we'll look at our new genius studying hard. Caleb grinned, revealing a row of teeth stained yellow from smoking. His hand shot straight for my desk drawer. I didn't stop him. He yanked it open, saw the thick stack of books inside. A cruel satisfaction flashed across his face. Son of a bitch, think you're hot shit for getting first place, huh? He ripped the stack of workbooks out and slammed them onto the floor. His cronies swarmed in, tearing, ripping, stomping. The sound of tearing paper was deafening. Scraps flew into the air like snowflakes. Go back to the gutter where you belong. Welfare case. You think you deserve to be number 1. They spat insults as they tore, flecks of saliva hitting my face. Other students gathered around, some excited, some just watching the show, some secretly filming with their phones. No one stepped in. Their laughter mixed with the sound of ripping paper. Like a pack of hyenas, I watched coldly as they turned all my books into a pile of refuse. Caleb, breathing heavily, seemed satisfied. He kicked at the paper scraps on the floor. Then he put on a fake grin. Oh man, Leo, my bad. My hand slipped. He pulled 2 bottles of iced tea from his pocket. This is for you. To cool off, yeah. He held one of the bottles out to me. The liquid sloshing inside was a dark, murky yellow. It sure as hell wasn't iced tea. It was piss. In my last life, I fell for his act and took a sip in front of the whole class. I remembered the foul, stinking taste for 2 lifetimes. The classroom fell silent. All eyes were on me, waiting for the humiliation. I looked at him. Slowly, I reached out and took the spiked bottle. A flash of triumphant joy crossed Caleb's eyes. I casually placed it in my desk drawer and sat down. What? Too good for me now. Drink it. The 3 of them rolled up their sleeves, looking menacing. I reached into my drawer and pulled out an identical bottle of iced tea. The one I bought from the vending machine just before class. The real deal. Fine. My voice was flat. I twisted the cap off my own real bottle, tilted my head back, and chugged several large gulps. It was cold and sweet. Refreshing. Caleb froze. He watched me drink, then looked down at the bottle in his own hand. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. He knew he'd tampered with one. You gonna drink too, Cal? I set my bottle down, looking at him. Isn't this your apology? Let's drink together. The crowd started to jeer. Yeah, Cal. Drink up. Leo drank his. Caleb's face shifted between shades of green and white. He was trapped. Tell you what, Cal, let me get you a fresh one. I reached into my drawer and pulled out the spike bottle. He gritted his teeth, looked at the bottle in my hand, then at his own. Finally, steeling himself, he snatched the bottle from my hand, twisted it open, held his breath, and took a huge swig. PFFFFFT. The next second, he sprayed it all out. The yellow liquid showered the crony standing opposite him. The foul stench of urine instantly filled the air. What the hell? What is that smell? Is that piss? The crowd erupted, stumbling back in horror. Caleb was bent over, gagging violently, his face the color of a plum. His 2 buddies were stunned, smelling the stench on themselves, nearly throwing up. I stood my ground, watching the farce unfold with cold detachment. Caleb shot his head up, his eyes bloodshot as he pointed a trembling finger at me. You son of a... What is going on here? What is all this noise? The sharp voice of our homeroom teacher, Mrs. Albright, cut through the chaos from the doorway. She saw the mess of workbook scraps on the floor, and her face turned to stone. Mrs. Albright, Caleb and his friends tore up my books, and they tried to make me drink urine. I spoke first. my voice laced with suppressed anger and grievance. I pointed to the floor. That's the evidence. Then I pointed to the bottle of iced tea that had fallen on the ground. Mrs. Albright covered her nose in disgust. Caleb was still gagging, unable to form a complete sentence. He's lying. He switched the... That's enough. Mrs. Albright had no interest in hearing it, cutting him off sharply. She glanced at the shredded homework on the floor, her anger boiling over. She was about to explode. Then Ethan Vance walked over. He handed the teacher his own, immaculately kept English workbook. He never turned in his homework with the rest of the class. The teacher took the workbook, glanced at him. Suddenly, her gaze locked onto me. Leo Carter, who told you to bring graded assignments back into the classroom? Have you no sense of protocol? Look at the mess you've caused. You're fired as my TA. Now go to the dean's office and write me a formal apology. She unloaded on me without any attempt to understand what had happened. Then she waved her hand dismissively. Everyone break it up. Back to your seats. Caleb, you and your friends, go get cleaned up, for heaven's sake. What a disgrace. Caleb was helped out of the room, shooting me a murderous glare over his shoulder. Mrs. Albright stomped off, her heels clicking angrily on the floor. The crowd dispersed, their looks now a mixture of curiosity, fear, and morbid amusement. I bent down. From the pile of debris, I gently pulled out my own pristine, untouched literature textbook, which had been hidden at the very bottom. I wiped the dust off the cover and held it tight. 2 weeks later, afternoon, gym class. The air was thick with the smell of sweat and restless teenage energy. I deliberately avoided the locker room. In my last life, it was after this class that a single scream dragged me into hell. I was on the outdoor basketball court, shooting hoops with a few other guys. Running, jumping, shooting. Sweat hit the hot blacktop and evaporated instantly. But out of the corner of my eye, I kept watch on the locker room building. Like a wary wolf. Leo, heads up. A ball came flying my way. I leaped, caught it. My body unfurled in midair. On the sidelines, a kid from the neighboring class, who I'd asked a favor of earlier, was holding up his phone, filming a video for a school project. The camera lens casually swept across the court. Suddenly, a scream. Shrill, terrified, it pierced the air of the entire athletic field. It came from the girls' locker room. It's starting. The entire field went still. Everyone turned to look. A dead silence. Then, an explosion of chatter. I saw Ethan Vance standing not far away, a cold, fleeting smirk on his lips. A moment later, a girl ran out crying, her face pale, pointing frantically at the locker room, babbling incoherently. Someone was peeping. I saw him, a shadow. It was a guy. The crowd was in an uproar. Who was it? What a creep. They should expel him. The dean of students and a couple of security guards stormed over, their faces grim. The crowd parted for them like the Red Sea. The dean's eyes scanned the students like a searchlight. Finally, they landed precisely on me. Cold, disgusted, as if my guilt was already a foregone conclusion. Leo Carter. His voice was low, laced with an authority that tolerated no argument. Were you during gym class? Every single I swiveled to me. Contempt, curiosity, schadenfreude. I was playing basketball, I said calmly, gesturing to the court. Playing basketball? The dean sneered. Someone saw you heading toward the locker rooms. Who? I challenged. Have them come here and say it to my face. The dean was taken aback, his expression hardening. I'm the one asking the questions here. The security cameras don't lie. Get over here now. The dean's office. The atmosphere was so tense you could cut it with a knife. The dean spun a laptop around to face me. A security video was playing on the screen. The hallway outside the girls' locker room. A blurry figure in a basketball jersey quickly flashed past. You could vaguely make out the number on the back. 8. The timestamp was clear. It was from just a few minutes ago, right after class ended. What do you have to say for yourself? The jersey I was wearing was the same color and number as the one in the video. The dean slammed his hand on the desk, his spittle practically hitting my face. You can take the kid out of the ghetto, but you can't take the ghetto out of the kid. The school gives you a scholarship, a chance, and you pull this disgusting stunt. You are a disgrace to this institution. You're expelled. A crowd of students was crammed outside the door, craning their necks to watch. Their whispers were a low hum, like a swarm of flies. I knew it was him. He's a psycho. Disgusting. Ethan stood at the front of the crowd, arms crossed, like an elegant spectator enjoying a show he'd directed himself. I looked at the video, watched it for a few seconds. Then I spoke. "Dean, this video has been edited." "Bullshit," the dean roared. "The evidence is right there." "The timestamp is correct, but the frame rate is off," I said, pointing at the screen. "Between this second and the next, the lighting jumps. The transition isn't smooth, and the angle is too convenient. All you see is a blurry shadow from behind. There's no face." I lifted my eyes to meet his. If someone was really peeping, how could only one camera have caught it? What about the other cameras in the hallway? Are they all broken? The dean's face shifted. I had clearly hit a nerve. The other cameras, of course, were coincidentally out of order. As for where I was, I pulled out my old cracked smartphone, opened a gallery, and played the video from earlier. On the screen, I was running on the court, jumping, shooting a basket, glistening with sweat. The timestamp on the video was perfectly clear, down to the second. It completely overlapped with the time the shadow appeared in the security footage. The camera had even panned unintentionally toward the locker room building, and everything looked normal. A classmate of mine was recording this for a school project. I said, "Do you need me to call him in to testify? Or perhaps we could check the high-definition camera on the other side of the athletic field for confirmation." I turned the phone screen toward him. The footage of me was undeniably real. The office was dead silent. The dean's face flushed red, then went pale, as if he'd been slapped hard across the face. The crowd outside fell silent too. The look of refined amusement vanished from Ethan's face, replaced by a dark, simmering anger. He stared at my phone as if he could set it on fire with his gaze alone. This doesn't prove anything definitive," the dean stammered. "Maybe you snuck away in between plays." "Dean," I cut him off, my voice turning cold. "You have a single, edited, blurry video from one source. I have a clear, real-time video showing I was on the court the entire time, with multiple witnesses, which can be cross-verified by other cameras. Which piece of evidence do you think is more credible? Or are you determined to frame me, regardless of the facts?" My words were like a knife, slicing away his thin veil of authority. The dean's face fell completely. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Finally, he slumped back into his chair, looking drained. "This matter is still under investigation. We will look into it further." "But Carter," he suddenly snapped, pointing a finger at me, his voice trying to reclaim some authority. "You keep your head down. One more incident, and you are gone. Do you hear me?" I put my phone away. I said nothing more. I turned and pushed open the door to his office. The crowd outside instinctively parted, creating a path for me. Their gazes had changed, from contempt to a mixture of shock, fear, and a sliver of newfound respect. Ethan was standing there. We brushed past each other. I heard him hiss, his voice barely a whisper, cold as ice. "You got lucky." The dorm building after evening study hall. It was quiet except for the low hum of air conditioning units. The air was hot and sticky. I walked down the hallway, a stack of books in my arms. Every step was a step on a memory from my past life. I knew it was coming. As I reached my door, I saw a figure huddled on the floor. A girl. Her uniform was disheveled, a few buttons undone. Her hair was a mess, hiding half her face. It was Vanessa King, one of Ethan's many followers. She was leaning against my door, letting out soft sobs. There were fresh, angry red marks on her wrists, as if from struggle. A strong smell of alcohol hit me. A convincing performance. I didn't break my stride. I acted as if I didn't see her. I took out my key, ready to unlock the door. The moment the key slid into the lock, a scream loud enough to shake the walls erupted from Vanessa's throat. She scrambled away like a startled rabbit, cowering in a corner, shaking, tears streaming down her face. She pointed a trembling finger at me, her voice shrill and broken. "Stay away, please. Don't touch me. Help me, rape." The silent hallway exploded as if a bomb had gone off. Dozens of doors flew open. Heads poked out. Shock, disgust, and anger. A flood of gazes drowned me. "What the hell? Leo, did he try to rape Vanessa? That son of a bitch." Phone cameras flashed like 100 wolf eyes, all aimed at me. The strobing lights were dizzying. "No, I just got here, and she was... I tried to explain, but my voice was instantly swallowed by a wave of outrage. Scum, and you're still trying to lie. Look at him, the broke creep. I knew he was a psycho. The peeping incident was probably him, too. I was drowning in their accusations. Ethan's figure appeared at the end of the hall, dressed in silk pajamas. He looked as if he'd just been woken up. His face wore the perfect expression of shock and righteous anger. Leo, what did you do to her? He rushed over, standing protectively in front of Vanessa like a noble knight. Vanessa cried even harder, clutching his pajamas, trembling. He dragged me here. He wanted to. Sob. A perfect script. A vicious trap. Security and the dean of students, alerted by the commotion, arrived with thunderous expressions. They called the police. The police arrived quickly. Cold steel handcuffs snapped onto my wrists. You're coming with us. I was shoved and led away. Behind me were countless looks of contempt and a chorus of whispers. It's over for him this time. He's definitely getting expelled. Probably jail time too. Serve him right. Ethan watched as I was forced into the police car. His eyes held the cold, undisguised glint of victory. At the police station, the light in the interrogation room was a harsh, clinical white. Talk. What happened? An officer banged on the table, his tone severe. I got back to my dorm room, and she was lying there. I repeated, I didn't do anything. What about the security footage? Another officer asked his colleague. The reply came a few minutes later. Chief, they're saying the cameras in that dorm hallway have been malfunctioning since last night. Didn't record a thing. The interrogating officer's brow furrowed, his suspicion of me deepening. A perfect trap. No evidence to prove my innocence. All the evidence pointed directly at me. A drunk, traumatized girl. A chorus of outraged witnesses. And a security camera that just happened to be broken. The school was putting immense pressure on them, demanding severe punishment, expulsion. The story had already exploded online. Scholarship student at elite academy accused of sexual assault was the top local headline. I could already imagine the vicious comments. They were probably calling for my head. Officer. I looked up, meeting the glare of the interrogation lamp. My voice was unervingly calm. My roommates can testify that I was with them studying after evening classes. I had just gotten back to the dorm, and doesn't this all seem a little too convenient? The camera just happens to break at that exact time. The marks on Vanessa's wrists, they look fresh, but the edges are too clean. They don't look like defensive wounds. I paused and dropped the bombshell. I think I was framed. The interrogating officer's gaze sharpened. Clearly, they had also sensed that something was off, but they had no proof. We need concrete evidence. The officer's tone softened slightly, but remained grave. Otherwise, our hands are tied. Give me a little time, I said. I need to make a phone call. Given a brief moment alone, I dialed a number. In my last life, I knew about him. Zachary Hayes, a peeping Tom hiding behind the facade of a good student. His secret perch gave him a perfect view of the corner of my dorm building. Zach. I used his name directly. The breathing on the other end of the line hitched. Who is this? It's Leo Carter. Do I need to remind you what's hidden in the homework folder on your D drive? Dead silence on the other end. Only the sound of ragged, terrified breathing. You're bluffing. The pinhole camera in the third-floor girls' bathroom. The picture is pretty clear, isn't it? My voice was ice, devoid of any emotion. Send me the video of my dorm entrance from last night. If you don't, in 10 minutes, everything on your computer will be in the principal's inbox. And at the police station, your choice. A long silence followed. I could hear the chattering of his teeth. Finally, a broken, tearful voice of surrender. Give me an email address. A few minutes later, an encrypted video file arrived in my inbox. I opened it. A high-definition video. It clearly showed Vanessa King walking to my dorm room by herself. She took out a small knife, hesitated, then carefully drew the cuts on her own wrists. She then messed up her own hair and clothes, poured a little alcohol from a flask on herself, and slumped against the door. The entire time, her expression was calm, almost smug. There was no one else in the frame. I pushed my phone across the table to the officers. Gentlemen, this is the concrete evidence you were looking for. Suddenly, a phone rang in the next room. The older officer got up to answer it. 10 minutes later, he returned, his expression now unreadable. The authenticity of this video will need to be verified. Officer, I'll wait for the results. My gaze was calm and cold. A full week later, the forensics report came back. The video was authentic, irrefutable proof. When the police came for Vanessa King, they found her in her bed, still pretending to cry. Until they showed her the video. Her face went white, and she collapsed. Then she started wailing for real. It wasn't me. Someone made me do it. Who made you do it? An officer demanded. Her lips trembled, gripped by an overwhelming fear. Finally, she lowered her head, biting her lip so hard it bled. No, nobody made me. It was my idea. She didn't dare say his name. The shadow of the Vance family was far more terrifying than the threat of jail. The police issued a public statement. My name was cleared. The school had no choice but to rescind the expulsion order. But the damage to my reputation lingered. The other students' gazes were still a complicated mess. I walked out of the police station. The sunlight was harsh. Ethan Vance was standing under the shade of a distant tree, watching me with cold eyes. Like a snake, temporarily retreated to its nest. I was free, but the air still felt thick with the officer's lingering stares. Pity, a little guilt, but mostly relief that the trouble was gone. I knew my innocence was only valid inside the station walls. The moment I stepped outside, the court of public opinion could still condemn me. Carter, the dean's car was parked at the curb. He rolled down the window, his face darker than a storm cloud. Get in. It was a command, not an invitation. The ride was silent, the air conditioning blasting cold air. The dean glared at me through the rearview mirror. This incident is over. Do you understand? When you get back to school, you keep your mouth shut. Don't mention it again. Got it. I stared out the window at the passing streets. I didn't answer. Over. How could it be over? When Ethan was trying to ruin my life, no one said it was over. When Vanessa was screaming her lies, no one said it was over. Now, they want to sweep it under the rug? Too late. Returning to school was like walking on broken glass. Students in the hallway scattered as I approached, as if I had the plague. Pointing, whispering, he's back. His family must have connections. Attempted rape. Disgusting. Their stares were like daggers in my back. Cold, suspicious, disgusted. As if the very air I breathed was contaminated. Ethan and his gang of cronies were leaning against the wall at the end of the hall. He raised the limited edition water bottle in his hand in a mock toast. As if saluting a well-played game. I knew what the administration wanted. To bury the scandal. To protect the school's prestigious reputation. They wanted to quietly shove me, the bad apple, back into the barrel and pretend nothing happened. As for the life they almost destroyed, who cared? Back in my small dorm room, I locked the door. I took out my battered phone, opened my email. The video was still there, a silent testament. Vanessa's ugly, self-directed performance. High definition, uncensored, enough to blow everything wide open. But I couldn't just release it. They'd sue me for invasion of privacy. The Vance family's lawyers would trace it back to me in a second and crush me. I needed a blade that couldn't be seen. Anonymity. I logged into a heavily encrypted, anonymous email account I had prepared long ago. I compressed and encrypted the video file. Attached it. For the recipient, I typed in the email addresses of several of the sharpest, most aggressive investigative journalists in the city. The subject line was simple. The full, uncensored truth of the Crestwood Academy framing scandal. Video attached. My finger hovered over the send button for a second. Then I pressed it. Hard. Message sent. The next day, the storm hit. Without warning, several major news outlets broke the story simultaneously. Reversal. High school girl fakes sexual assault to frame male classmate. Who pulled the strings? A vicious conspiracy inside an elite academy. On a night of broken cameras, the truth finds a way. Although Vanessa's face was blurred in the photos, the school uniform, the dorm building. Hashtag 13, they were instantly recognizable. The video clips, though edited for broadcast, showed the key moments with damning clarity. Her cutting her own wrist, her tearing her own clothes, her collapsing by the door. The internet exploded. WTF, this girl is insane. That poor guy. His life was almost ruined. What is the school doing? The cameras just break like that. Someone was behind this. Investigate. The tidal wave of public opinion turned, crashing down on the school with even greater force. The principal's office phone rang off the hook. The Board of Education, the media, prominent alumni. His face went from furious to pale to ashen. The dean paced his office like a caged animal. "We can't contain this, sir. The whole country is crucifying us. We have to make a statement." That afternoon, an emergency all-school assembly was called. The auditorium was packed. It was unnervingly quiet. Every student was glued to their phone, reading the explosive news, their expressions a mix of shock and awe. The principal walked onto the stage, his steps unsteady. He wiped the sweat from his brow and spoke into the microphone, his voice dry and trembling. After a thorough investigation by the school regarding the recent incident involving the accusation made by student Vanessa King against student Leo Carter, it has been determined to be a malicious and baseless fabrication by Ms. King alone. Mr. Carter is completely innocent of any wrongdoing. The school is deeply appalled by this act and will take severe disciplinary action against Ms. King in accordance with school policy. The short speech seemed to drain him of all his strength. The auditorium was silent for a beat. Then a massive buzz erupted. The students who had once looked at me with contempt now couldn't meet my eyes. Vanessa wasn't at the assembly. Hashtag 14. She was hiding in the nurse's office, where she was cornered by a pack of reporters. The flash of their cameras was relentless. "Did someone put you up to this? Why would you do such a thing?" She broke down, sobbing, curling into a ball. "No, nobody told me to do it. It was all my idea. I hate him. I was jealous of his grades." She bit her lip until it bled, refusing to utter his name. The shadow of the Vance family was more terrifying than public disgrace. The assembly ended abruptly. I stood up. The crowd parted around me like the sea. This time, their eyes held a new emotion, fear. No one knew how the video got out. I walked over to where Ethan was standing. For the first time, his face was ashen like a corpse. His carefully constructed plot had been shattered from the outside by an invisible knife. He whipped his head around, his gaze locking onto my back like a viper's. I didn't turn around. He knew it was me. But what could he do? There was no proof. Just like he had done to me before. Once the blade of public opinion starts swinging, it doesn't stop easily. The principal just wanted to put out the fire. But this fire was only getting started. The media firestorm was still raging. But the real threat was never out in the open. During a class break, as I was focused on a problem set, our homeroom teacher walked over, her expression complicated. She tapped on my desk. "Leo, the principal wants to see you in his office." Her voice was low, a mix of pity and relief. The classroom instantly went quiet. Dozens of eyes bored into me. I knew. It was here. Ethan's next move. Cutting me off at the knees. Hashtag 15. I reached the principal's office. The door was slightly ajar. The muffled sounds of a heated argument leaked out. "He has to be expelled." "No question." A sharp male voice. "This is the third time. Peeping Tom accusations, attempted rape, and now this media circus. What about the school's reputation?" But the investigations cleared him. It was all a frame-up. That was the principal's weary voice. A frame-up? Why is he the only one getting framed? Where there's smoke, there's fire. Mr. Vance's position is crystal clear. A problem student like this is a bad apple that will spoil the whole barrel. But we have no grounds. What grounds do you need? School Regulations, Section 7, Article 3. Any student who severely damages the school's reputation can be expelled by a vote of the Board of Trustees. Let's vote. All in favor of immediately expelling Leo Carter. Raise your hands. A brief silence. Then, I heard the rustle of hands going up. Through the crack in the door, I saw the principal slump in his chair. Across from him, a group of men in sharp suits, the board, had their hands raised. Their faces were cold and resolute. The loudest voice, a middle-aged man with slick-back hair, was Ethan's uncle, a powerful member of the board. The will of the Vance family was being executed without opposition. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. The voices inside stopped abruptly. "Come in." I pushed the door open. All eyes immediately swiveled to me, scrutinizing, disgusted, as if looking at a piece of trash that needed to be taken out. The principal rubbed his tired eyes. "Leo, you..." "Principal, could I have a word with you alone?" The board members scoffed. "Whatever you have to say it here. We don't have time to listen to It's about the school's reputation and next year's admission rates." ####16. I looked directly at the principal, speaking each word clearly. Perhaps I can pull them up from rock bottom, maybe even push them to an all-time high. The principal's head snapped up, his eyes suddenly sharp. The board members exchanged glances, then broke into open ridicule. What a joke! You, a kid who can't even save himself. Enough! The principal suddenly barked. He stared at me for a few seconds, then waved his hand. All of you, please step out for a moment. The board members were stunned, rising with grumbles of protest. Frank, you can't be serious. Out! The door closed, leaving just the two of us. Talk, the principal said, leaning back, his eyes a mixture of final desperation and doubt. You'd better have something real. State scholarship champion. I said the 3 words. The principal froze, then looked at me as if I'd told the world's greatest joke. What did you just say? I said, this year's top SAT score in the state, the winner of the Blackwood Scholarship, will come from this school. I stared at him, and it will be me. Silence. The principal stared, mouth agape, for a full 10 seconds. Then he shot upright, a humorless laugh escaping him. Leo, do you have any idea what you're saying? State champion? Do you know what that means? A perfect score, or damn near it? A 1600. This school has never produced a state champion out of hundreds of thousands of students. I can do it. My tone was flat, unwavering. If I'm a champion, all this negative press becomes a legend. An inspirational story. The scholarship kid from the projects who conquered the elite. That's better than a multi-million-dollar advertising campaign. The principal's eyes flickered. He was clearly struck by the possibility, but the doubt remained immense. Empty words. On what grounds? ####17. You can test me right now. Give me any problem, from any senior-level subject, at any difficulty. I pointed to a thick stack of papers on his desk, a set of practice questions for the International Mathematical Olympiad, notoriously difficult. Even that will do. The principal stared at me, a fierce battle raging in his eyes. He picked up the phone and dialed the head of the math department. Bring me a copy of this year's final challenge exam. To my office. Now. The exam arrived moments later, still warm from the printer. 2 hours. Finish it, the principal said, glancing at his watch. He slapped the paper down in front of me and handed me a pen. If you can deliver on your promise. He didn't finish the sentence, but the meaning was clear. I didn't speak. I picked up the pen, pulled over a chair, and began to write. The only sound in the office was the scratching of my pen on paper. I moved with incredible speed. Multiple choice questions were answered almost at a glance. For the fill-in-the-blanks, a moment of mental calculation was all it took. The long-form problems were solved with clear logic and precise steps, without a moment of hesitation. It was as if I already knew the answers. The principal, who had started out watching with his arms crossed, gradually sat up straighter. He leaned forward. His expression shifted from doubt to surprise, and finally, to utter shock. This speed, this accuracy, it wasn't like solving problems. It was like copying an answer key. But he was watching with his own eyes. There was no way the questions could have been leaked. 1 hour and 45 minutes. I put down the pen. I'm done. The principal snapped back to reality, almost snatching the paper from me. He grabbed a red pen and began grating it against the answer key. His hand was shaking. The more he grated, the more it shook. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead. His breathing grew heavy. Finally, he threw down the red pen and looked up at me as if I were some kind of monster. ####180197. His voice trembled. You used an advanced theorem on the final question that's technically outside the curriculum. So I had to dock you 3 points from a perfect 200. But the logic, it's flawless. On this exam, anyone who got a passing grade was considered a genius among geniuses. He had expected the highest score to be around 160. 197. This wasn't genius. This was supernatural. He collapsed in his chair, his chest heaving. He looked at me with a complex mix of fear, excitement, and the wild hope of someone who had found a lifeline in a desperate situation. You can really do it. I can't. I met his gaze. But only if I'm still here to take the SATs. Silence. A long silence. Only the sound of the principal's heavy breathing. He was weighing his options. He was making a bet. Finally, he slammed his hand on the desk. He stood up. his eyes filled with resolve. Done. He pulled open the door. The impatient board members flooded back in. Frank, have you decided? The expulsion papers. He's not being expelled. The principal's voice boomed, sharp and decisive. All the board members froze. Principal Jean, the board's resolution. I am the principal. I have veto power over all matters of student enrollment. His gaze swept over them, filled with a do-or-die intensity. Leo Carter's enrollment is secure until the SATs are over. Are you insane? You're going to offend Mr. Vance over some charity case. What if he's this year's state champion? The principal cut them off coldly. The office was instantly silent. It was as if someone had grabbed them all by the throat. State champion? What kind of joke was that? Hashtag 19 him. Yes, him. The principal pointed to the 197-point exam on his desk. Whose kid in this room can get a score like that on this test? The board members looked at the nearly perfect paper, speechless. Their faces went from red to white. This matter is closed, the principal declared, ending the discussion. Meeting adjourned. Ethan's uncle left in a huff, his eyes full of venom. The office was empty again, just me and the principal. He waved a tired hand. Leo, remember your promise. You can go now. I nodded and turned to leave. The moment the door closed, I heard a long, trembling exhale from inside. He was gambling, and I never lose. Ethan Vance. You wanted to kick me out of the game? Too bad. This pawn just became the principal's queen. The final bell rang. A river of students flowed out of the magnificent school gates. A parade of luxury cars arrived, a mini auto show. I slung my faded backpack over my shoulder and walked against the current toward the familiar, secluded alley that led to my cheap rental apartment. The air was still thick with the day's heat and the sour smell of garbage. I knew. They were waiting up ahead. In my last life, it was right here. 3 thugs, cigarettes dangling from their lips, blocked the path. Fists feet a steel pipe. They rained down on me. I curled up on the ground, protecting my head, the sharp pain of a broken rib, blood blinding my eyes. 1 month. I spent an entire month in the hospital. I missed the crucial final review period, and I worry my grandpa half to death. This time, I didn't slow down, but my palms were a little sweaty, not from fear, from excitement. The gears of my revenge were about to click into place again. I didn't go straight into the alley. I turned into the rundown boxing gym at the entrance. The bell on the door chimed. The smell of sweat, leather, and disinfectant hung in the air. Hey, Mac. I called out to the figure, pounding a heavy bag on the other side of the ring. Hashtag 20Mac. A retired boxer who ran this small gym. He was tough, but his fists were tougher. In my last life, after I was beaten to a pulp, he was the one who found me and took me to the hospital. This life, I came to him early. I used my lunch money to pay for the cheapest membership and learn practical self-defense from him. For one reason only. Today, he stopped, wiping sweat from his face with a towel. Kid, it ain't your training day. I know, Mac. I handed him a cold bottle of water. Thanks for everything you've taught me. I wanted to buy you dinner. The steak and cheese place at the end of the alley. He paused, taking the water, looking me up and down. What's the occasion? You're the kid who split a bagel for 2 meals. Now you're buying me a steak and cheese. Came into a little money, I said vaguely, my expression sincere. Just wanted to say thanks. He eyed me suspiciously for a few seconds, then broke into a grin, showing his smoke-stained teeth. All right, kid. I'm starving anyway. 5 minutes later, Mac and I walked side by side into the dark alley. He was wearing a tank top, his muscles bulging, radiating an aura of someone you don't mess with. I walked half a step behind him. My heart beat a little faster. Here they come. Halfway down the alley, 3 shadows emerged from behind a dumpster. Cigarettes in their mouths, hands in their pockets, short metal batons wrapped in newspaper in their hands. They blocked our path, exactly like last time. Yo, kid, we've been waiting for you, the one with bleached blonde hair said, spitting out his cigarette but sauntering over with a nasty grin. His eyes flicked past me to Mac, paused for a second, but he didn't seem concerned. This ain't your business, old man. Get lost. Mac's brow furrowed. He pulled me behind him. What's the meaning of this? The meaning is this. The blonde suddenly lunged, ripping the newspaper off the batten. The steel pipe whistled through the air, aimed right at my head. Get him. Hashtag 21 his two buddies charged at the same time. Shit. Mac's reflexes were insane. He was a pro after all. He didn't back down. He moved in, ducking under the pipe, and his right fist shot out like a cannonball. Thwack! A dull, sickening sound. It connected squarely with the blonde's face. Ack! The blonde screamed, blood exploding from his nose as he stumbled back and fell into a pile of trash bags. The other two thugs swung their batons. Mac blocked and dodged, his movements clean and efficient. He landed a vicious uppercut to the stomach of the second guy. The thug's eyes bulged, and he collapsed to his knees, dry heaving. The third guy saw this, nearly dropped his baton in fear, and turned to run. Son of a bitch, you looking for trouble? Mac cursed, about to give chase. Mac, let it go. I quickly grabbed his arm. Bunch of punks. We should call the cops. Mac was still fuming. It's no use. I shook my head, watching the three of them scramble away and disappear. They're just low-level thugs paid to do a job. Even if they get arrested, they'll be out in a day or two. Mac was breathing hard, looking at the empty alley, then back at me. Kid, you knew someone was waiting for you, didn't you? I didn't deny it. So the steak and cheese was a lie? You just wanted me as a bodyguard? The steak and cheese is real, I said, looking him in the eye. And the thanks is real, too. Otherwise, I'd be the one lying on the ground right now. Max stared at me for a long moment, then cursed under his breath and ruffled my hair roughly. Damn, you're a crafty little bastard. Come on, let's go eat. You owe me too with extra cheese. I followed him out of the alley. I glanced back one last time at the dark passage. There were a few fresh drops of blood on the pavement. The blondes. In my last life, that was my blood. The warmth of the steak and cheese hadn't fully faded from my stomach. As I reached the foot of my dilapidated tenement building, my heart sank. Two souped-up, flashy motorcycles were parked crookedly by the entrance. A few guys in tight-fitting shirts and gaudy tattoos were squatting by the curb, smoking, their eyes scanning everyone who came and went. The air smelled of cheap cigarettes and tension. Damn it, it's Rico's crew. They're even earlier than last time. I practically flew up the stairs. The door to our apartment was ajar. From inside came the sound of things being smashed, vicious cursing, and my grandfather's weak, desperate coughing and pleading. Please, have mercy. Stop breaking things. We'll pay the money, I swear. Shut up, you old fossil. Get out of the way. Where are your son and daughter-in-law hiding, huh? If you don't cough up the cash today, I'll break you into pieces and sell you for parts. I burst through the door. The scene before me sent a hot rush of blood to my head. Our apartment looked like it had been hit by a tornado. The table was overturned, chairs were splintered, and the screen of our ancient television was shattered. Broken dishes littered the floor. The cookie tin where my mother hid her cash was pried open, the few crumpled bills inside thrown on the floor and stomped on. Two thugs were holding baseball bats, grinning as they prepared to smash the small bookshelf my grandfather had built for me. My grandfather, his back bent, was clinging to one of the thugs' legs, begging. He was shoved away, stumbling, nearly falling. The leader, a man with a thick gold chain around his neck, Rico, had one foot on the overturned table, shouting and spitting. In my last life, it was at this moment. My grandfather, trying to protect my last few review books, had rushed forward and been hit in the leg with a bat. The sound of the bone snapping. I still remembered it. Son of a bitch! Who let you in here? Everything stopped. Everyone turned to look at me. Rico narrowed his beady eyes, looking me up and down. Well, the little brat's back. Where are your parents? Hiding like the cowards they are. The money you owe us. When are you going to pay it back? He advanced on me, step by step, reeking of stale smoke and menace. His thugs closed in behind him, cracking their knuckles. My grandfather's face was pale. He tried to pull me back. Leo, don't worry about. Grandpa, stay back. I gently guided him to the relative safety of a corner, then turned to face Rico. The money. I'll pay it back, but not today. Now, take your men and get out. Rico looked at me as if I had told the funniest joke in the world. He and his thugs burst into laughter. Ha ha ha, get out. You little punk. You watch too many movies. Who the hell do you think you're talking to? His laughter died abruptly, his face twisting into a snarl. He lunged forward and grabbed the collar of my jacket. No money. Then we'll take it out on you. Or maybe. His lecherous gaze swept over me, then flicked to my grandfather in the corner. "We'll just toss this old fossil out to the dogs." His thugs jeered, banging their bats on the floor. Now, I wrenched myself free from his grasp and took 2 steps back. Before they could surround me again, I turned and bolted into the cluttered storage closet next to me. The sound of things being knocked over and thrown around came from inside. "Damn it, try to run." Rico cursed and led his men to the closet door. And then they all froze. Their pupils contracted. I emerged from the closet. I was dragging something with me. A blade? No, you couldn't call that a blade. It was an impossibly long weapon from another age. The blade was rusted, but it radiated a cold, deadly aura. The long wooden handle was dark with age, gripped tightly in my hands. It was over 7 feet long. Taller Danme, a family heirloom, a vintage Scottish claymore. My grandfather had bought it at a flea market decades ago. It had been forgotten in the deepest corner of the storage closet ever since. In my last life, it was sold for scrap without ever seeing the light of day again. But now, I held aloft with both hands. The rusted tip was pointed steadily at Rico's nose. The sheer weight of it made my arms tremble, but my stance was firm. My eyes were as cold as steel. The room was dead silent. Only the sound of heavy breathing. The smirks on the thugs' faces were gone, replaced by shock. Looking at the terrifying weapon that was longer than their own arms, they took an involuntary step back. This thing, it was terrifying just to look at. Rico swallowed hard, trying to maintain his bravado. "The hell? You trying to scare me with that antique piece of junk?" Before he could finish a sentence, I took a sharp step forward. Gripping the hilt with both hands, I used my whole body to swing it. Whoosh! The blade cut through the air with a low, heavy sound. The terrifying weight and momentum. Cracked! Slammed into the wooden shoe rack by the door. The rack exploded into splinters. Wood chips flew everywhere, nearly hitting Rico in the face. All the thugs flinched, their faces pale. If that had hit a person, it would have turned their bones to dust. "Come on." My eyes were bloodshot. I raised the claymore again, the tip now pointed at Rico. My voice was hoarse, filled with a desperate, cornered fury. "Anyone touches my grandfather today, I'll use this family treasure to let some of your blood. Kill one of you, and I break even. Kill 2, and I come out ahead. Who wants to be first?" I took another step forward. The tip of the claymore was almost touching Rico's nose. He scrambled back, nearly tripping over the debris on the floor. His face was white, and cold sweat beaded on his forehead. He could see it in my eyes. This poor kid from the projects. He was dead serious. He was ready to die, and to take them with him. They were just here to collect a debt, not to get into a life-or-death battle. "Crazy. You're a goddamn psycho," Rico stammered, pointing a shaky finger at me as he backed toward the door. "You little punk. You just wait. This isn't over." His thugs didn't dare say a word, practically falling over each other to squeeze out the door first. Rico backed out, shouted one last empty threat, and slammed the door shut. The sound of their panicked footsteps faded down the stairs. The room was suddenly quiet, leaving only the wreckage, and my own heavy breathing, and the slight hum of the claymore's tip still trembling. My grandfather, leaning against the wall, looked at me, his lips trembling, tears streaming down his wrinkled face. "Leo, you," clang. My hands went limp, and the heavy claymore fell to the floor. I walked over and gently put my arm around my grandfather's shaking shoulders. "Grandpa, don't be afraid. It's over now." I stared at the broken, slammed door. My eyes were ice. I didn't sleep a wink that night. We didn't clean up the mess. My grandfather and I huddled together on the small bed in the back room. My ears were tuned to every sound from outside. The claymore leaned against the headboard, its cold hilt within arm's reach. I knew a guy like Rico, after being humiliated like that, would never let it go. He would be back. Sure enough, the next evening, just as it was getting dark, the neighborhood dogs started barking frantically. Then a chaotic, hurried, stomping sound on the stairs, like a drumbeat of war. More of them than last time. The door was pounded on, not knocked. Bang, bang, bang. "Open the damn door. Get the hell out here." It was Rico's voice, even more furious and unhinged than before. "If you don't open this door, I'll chop it down." I took a deep breath. I stood behind the door and looked through the peephole. My blood ran cold. The hallway was filled with them, at least a dozen men, and every single one of them was holding a gleaming machete or a steel pipe. Rico was at the front, his eyes bloodshot, veins bulging on his neck, looking like he was ready to kill. "You little piece of shit! You were so tough yesterday. Let's see how you die today." He swung his machete at the door. Wood splintered. The door wouldn't hold. Now, I backed away quickly and pulled out my old secondhand phone. The screen was cracked, but it worked. I dialed a number I had memorized but never called. In my last life, I knew of him, Detective Jack Volkov, a hard-ass, by-the-book cop who couldn't be bought and hated criminals. Most importantly, his wife had gone missing years ago, and it had become his obsession. The phone rang for a long time before it was answered. A deep, tired, and wary male voice came on the line. "Yeah, who is this?" I lowered my voice, covering the mouthpiece with a cloth to muffle and distort it. "Detective Volkov, do you want to find your wife?" The breathing on the other end stopped cold. Then came the sound of a chair being violently pushed back. "Who is this? What do you know?" "Northbridge, the old tenement on 5th Street, Unit 4B. I spoke rapidly. "Right now, a group of armed gang members are here for a violent debt collection. They're about to commit murder. Arrest them. Make them talk. You might find a clue about your wife." Crack! The lock on the door was shattered. The door was kicked open. Rico and his gang of armed thugs stormed in, their faces twisted in vicious grins. Hashtag, 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 27 beep, beep, beep. I immediately hung up and shoved the phone into a crack in the sofa cushions. "You little bastard. Let's see you act tough now." Rico, seeing me standing alone and unarmed in the living room, grew even more arrogant. He pointed his machete at me. "Where's the money? If you don't have it today, I'm going to chop you and that old fossil into dog food." His thugs brandished their machetes, the cold steel gleaming, packing the small room. "No money," I said, standing my ground, my eyes scanning the blade in each of their hands. "Rico, you brought this many guys just to scare a student." "Scare you?" Rico spat. "I'm here to make you bleed." He raised his machete. "Do it." I roared, and instead of backing down, I took a step forward and pointed to my own neck. "Right here. Take a swing. Anyone who doesn't swing today is my bitch. You think you can scare me with a few rusty blades?" My voice was loud, incredibly provocative. My only goal was to enrage them, to make every single one of them brandish their weapons, so that when the police arrived, they would see everything clearly. Rico and his men were, predictably, enraged. "Son of a bitch, you're asking for it. Kill him." 3 or 4 machetes swung at me at once. The cold air from the blades almost touched my skin. I threw myself backward, knocking over the table, narrowly avoiding the attack. The scene descended into chaos. The thugs were shouting, swinging their blades wildly, smashing everything in sight. Just then, "Police, don't move. Drop your weapons. All of you." A roar like thunder exploded from the doorway. Hashtag, 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 28 Volkov. He and 7 or 8 plainclothes detectives instantly blocked the door and windows. Dark, menacing gun barrels were pointed at every armed thug in the room. Everyone froze. Rico's arm, holding the machete, was stuck in midair, the vicious grin on his face frozen in place. His thugs were terrified. Several machetes clattered to the floor. "Hands behind your head. Get on the ground." The officers stormed in, quickly disarming them, forcing them to the floor one by one and slapping on handcuffs. As Rico was being roughly cuffed, he finally snapped out of his shock. He struggled, screaming, "You can't arrest me. Do you know who I work for? The Vance family." Volkov slammed the butt of his pistol into Rico's stomach, turning the rest of his words into a pained gag. "The Vance family?" Volkov's eyes were like ice. "Good. I have a few questions for you people." His gaze swept over the wreckage and the machetes, finally landing on me. It was a look of scrutiny and curiosity. I leaned against the wall, catching my breath, my face blank. I knew he was more interested in what I had said on the phone. The clue about his wife. The thugs were dragged away. Volkov stayed behind. He walked up to me and was silent for a moment. "You okay?" "I'm fine." I shook my head. "That phone call." "What phone call?" I looked up, my expression one of a student's confusion and lingering fear. "Officer, thank you for getting here in time. That was terrifying." Volkov gave me a long, hard look, but didn't press the issue. He knew he wouldn't get anything more out of me. He just handed me his card. If you need anything, call me. He turned and left. However, the news came quickly through back channels. Rico and his crew, despite being caught red-handed with weapons, were released in less than 48 hours. The Vance family had pulled strings. The official reason was insufficient evidence, and that it was merely a civil debt dispute. I wasn't surprised. The roots of the Vance family tree ran deep. Pulling a few weeds wouldn't hurt the trunk. Hashtag 29 money. It was a mountain crushing the air from my lungs. Rico's threat was gone for now, but the interest on the loan shark's debt was compounding daily. Even heavier was the weight of my grandfather's illness. The memory of his agonizing pain in my last life, of him wasting away to nothing but bone, was seared into my soul. I had to get him a checkup. I had to, but that cost money, and the treatment that would follow. That was a figure I didn't dare to imagine. My only hope was the school scholarship system. Scoring number 1 on 2 consecutive practice exams came with a $30,000 prize. Enough for the initial deposit and compatibility testing for a liver transplant. I had to get it. The next practice exam was just around the corner. I could feel Ethan's patience wearing thin. After I had foiled his schemes several times, the look in his eyes was no longer playful cruelty, but true, venomous hatred. Like a cornered snake, brewing a more lethal poison. I knew what he would do next. He still had one last card to play, the most effective one against a charity case like me. Isabella Rossi. She appeared. After school that day, the setting sun bathed her in a golden light. She was leaning against a pink Porsche, her long hair in soft waves, sunglasses pushed up on her head, revealing a face that was a perfect mix of innocence and allure. The long, pale legs under her short skirt drew the eyes of every guy who walked by. The star athlete of our sister school, a Rossi family heiress, Ethan Vance's fiancée. Every title she held glittered, a world away from my faded school jacket. Leo, she said my name, her voice soft and sweet, with a hint of perfectly practiced shyness. Can we talk? The area around us fell silent. All eyes were on us, filled with shock, jealousy, and disbelief. I stopped and looked at her. In my last life, this was the exact moment. I had been a flattered fool, my heart racing, thinking my luck had finally turned. In reality, she was the one who dragged me into a sweet abyss from which there was no escape. What is it? My tone was flat and motionless. She seemed surprised by my reaction, pausing for a moment. Then her smile grew even sweeter. She walked closer, bringing a cloud of expensive perfume with her. You were amazing in the basketball game the other day. I've been noticing you for a while. She lowered her head slightly, a blush on her cheeks. A flawless performance. And you're so smart, getting the top score. She complained softly, a hint of a pout in her voice, subtly closing the distance between us. If I were the poor kid from my last life, desperate for acceptance and warmth, I would have been completely captivated. But now I just watched her act. My heart was a block of ice. And I raised an eyebrow. She was taken aback again. My reactions were clearly not in her script. And I was wondering if I could buy you a coffee and maybe ask you a few questions about schoolwork. She blinked her large eyes, full of expectation. This was the first step. Get close, establish a connection. Then would come skipping class, go to clubs, drinking, destroying me with a life of excess. That's how it went last time. I was silent for a few seconds. Then I smiled. Not a happy smile, but one that was playful, even a little predatory. Ask me questions. I took a step forward, suddenly very close. So close I could see the flutter of her eyelashes, smell the sweet scent of her perfume. Her body tensed. She instinctively wanted to step back, but she forced herself to stay, maintaining her sweet expression, though a flicker of panic crossed her eyes. Isabella, I said, my voice low, for her ears only. Let's not play games. You don't want my help with your homework. You're interested in me, right? Hashtag 31. My words were as blunt as a knife, tearing through her pretense. Her cheeks flushed a deep red. Not an act this time, but genuine embarrassment and shock. She had probably never met anyone who went so far off script. What are you talking about? Am I wrong? I held her gaze, not letting her look away. Then let's not waste time on coffee. I grabbed her wrist. Hard. She let out a small gasp, her sunglasses falling off, revealing her truly startled, beautiful eyes. A collective gasp went through the onlookers. What are you doing? She tried to pull away, but my grip was like iron. You're interested, aren't you? I pulled her along, ignoring her protests, heading directly for the quiet alley next to the school. I'll take you somewhere quieter, where we can have a real talk. My actions were rough and direct, completely derailing her plan of a slow seduction. She was completely stunned, half dragged by me. Her heels stumbled on the pavement, her face a mixture of red and white. It was a cocktail of anger, fear, and a strange thrill at being treated so roughly. Her bodyguards started to move forward, but she stopped them with a panicked look. The show had to go on. In the depths of the quiet, deserted alley, I pushed her against the wall, my body close. I loomed over her in the shadows. She could feel a dangerous energy coming from me, different from the polished prep school boy she was used to. What? What do you want? Her voice trembled. She was genuinely a little scared. What do I want? I leaned in, my nose almost touching her forehead, my breath on her face. You're the one who came looking for me, Miss Rossi, and now you're asking me what I want. My fingers lightly traced her smooth cheek, feeling her tremble violently. Since you're here, don't think you can leave so easily. And then I lowered my head and kissed her. It was a forceful, demanding kiss with an almost punishing bite. It was nothing like the gentle, hesitant kiss she might have imagined. It was an invasion, an act of possession. MMPH. Her eyes flew open, her mind a complete blank. Her hands pushed weakly against my chest, but soon the kiss left her weak-kneed and dizzy, her eyes losing focus. She was used to being worshipped. She had never been treated like this. But the forcefulness, the novelty of it, stirred a shameful response in her body. I don't know how long it was before I let her go. Her lips were slightly swollen, her eyes dazed. She leaned against the wall, gasping for air, the collar of her shirt in disarray, like a delicate doll caught in a storm. She looked at me, her expression a whirlwind of anger, shame, and a strange, new excitement. I licked my lips, as if savoring the taste. Not bad. Next time you need help with your homework, we'll come here. With that, I released her and turned to leave, without a backward glance, as if she were just an amusing diversion. I left her there, slumped against the wall. Watching my retreating back, her expression shifted from dazed to confused, then to a flicker of defiance, and a deeper curiosity. The hunter had become interested in her prey, but she never expected the prey to have such sharp teeth and a bite back so hard. From that moment on, the rules of the game had changed. Ethan wanted to use a beautiful woman to destroy me. Fine. Let's see who devours whose heart first. The night before the second round of practice SATs, the air was thick with the smell of printer ink and anxiety. I knew Ethan was getting antsy. He could not tolerate me taking first place again. Sure enough, a call came from Isabella. Her voice was sweet and cloying, with a perfect touch of vulnerability. Leo, the exam is tomorrow, and I'm so nervous. I can't seem to focus on anything. Come out for a drink with me? Just relax, just for a little while. I got a table at Aura, this cool lounge. A few of my friends will be there. It's all very chill. Here it was, the exact same script as my last life. Use alcohol and a beautiful woman to keep me at a bar, get me drunk, and make me miss the exam tomorrow. Last time, I went like an idiot and got so drunk I blacked out. When I woke up, it was the next afternoon. The exam was over. Sure, I said my agreement quick, almost eager. Isabella seemed surprised on the other end. Then a note of suppressed joy entered her voice. Really? Okay, it's a date. See you at Aura at 9. I hung up and immediately dialed another number. Mac, get every guy from a gym who can hold their liquor. Tonight at Aura Lounge, someone's buying all you can drink. I need you to help me drink a few girls under the table. Mac grumbled on the other end of the line. But when he heard all you can drink and the possibility of a fight, he immediately perked up. Hell yeah, we're on our way. 9 p.m. Aura Lounge. The music was deafening, the lights low and seductive. Isabella and her friends were draped over the sofas in the largest VIP booth. Several bottles of expensive liquor and dozens of beers were already on the table. They were all seasoned partiers, their eyes sizing me up with a hint of contempt. Seeing me arrive alone, Isabella smiled and came over, trying to link her arm with mine. I sidestepped her, my gaze sweeping over the booth. "Just you guys." "Yeah, just my besties, it's fine." Before she could finish, there was a commotion at the entrance. Mac and 5 or 6 of his gym buddies, all built like trucks and radiating menace, strode in. They completely filled the booth area. All of them were in tank tops, showing off their bulging muscles, their expressions fierce. Isabella and her friends were stunned, their smiles frozen on their faces. Who are they?" "My coach and my training partners," I said, plopping down and grabbing a beer. They heard someone was buying drinks and insisted on coming. Mac grinned, showing a row of white teeth. He grabbed a bottle of scotch and raised it to Isabella's friends. "Ladies, thanks for the hospitality. I'll start us off." And with that, he tilted the bottle back and started chugging. The girls' faces fell. They instinctively shrank back. The tables had been turned. The plan to get me drunk had become a party for a crew of brawlers. Mac and his buddies, being trained fighters, were full of energy, and their tolerance for alcohol was bottomless. Drinking games, shots, chugging contests. Their assault was as relentless as a series of combination punches. Isabella's friends were no match for them. They were quickly overwhelmed, laughing and squealing as they were forced to drink, and soon they were slumped over, their eyes glazed, slurring their words. Isabella sat next to me, frantic. Her plan was in ruins. She tried several times to get close to me, to pour me a drink, but she was always enthusiastically interrupted by Mac and his crew. "Hey, our boy's girl, a toast. To you? Thank for the drinks. You're beautiful. I'll drink to that. You just have a sip." Isabella was forced to down several drinks, her cheeks flushing, her eyes starting to lose focus. The time was right. I gave Mac a look. He understood. He roared, "All right, boys, take good care of these lovely ladies. No one leaves until they're on the floor." The booth erupted into even more intense combat. I took the opportunity to pull Isabella to her feet. "It's too loud in here. Let's go somewhere quiet." Isabella was half drunk, her head spinning, but she still remembered her mission. She clutched her purse, which contained the special something Ethan had given her. "Okay, yeah." She leaned against me, her body soft, her perfume mingling with the smell of alcohol. There was a hotel nearby. I got a room. The moment we were inside, she threw herself at me, kissing me, her hands fumbling with her purse. "Wait, let's have a drink first. To get in the mood," she gasped, pulling out a small, expensive bottle of mineral water. The cap was already slightly loose. She quickly twisted it open, her back to me, and secretly dropped in the powder. But to me, her movements were in slow motion. In my last life, I drank this water and passed out. I suddenly wrapped my arms around her from behind. "I've been dying for this," I whispered, my breath hot on her ear. She gasped, and before she could react, I spun her around. "Leo, wait. Have some water first," she said, bringing the bottle she was holding to my lips. I took a large gulp into my mouth, then I lunged forward and kissed her hard, forcing the drug-laced water from my mouth into hers. MMPH. Her eyes flew open, and she tried to struggle. But my arms were like steel bands around her, and my lips smothered her protests. She was forced to swallow the drugged water. She shoved me away, coughing violently, her eyes wide with terror and disbelief. What did you give me?" "Whatever you were planning to give me." I watched her coldly. The drug worked fast. Her eyes quickly lost focus, her body went limp, and she started to slide to the floor. Her face was a mask of terror and confusion. I caught her, lifted her, and tossed her onto the large hotel bed. I looked down at her unconscious face, as delicate as a doll's. I felt no pity. She was just Ethan's tool, nothing more. I leaned over and unbuttoned her shirt. My movements were calm, almost clinical. Tonight, I would collect some interest. ####36, not just her body. But I would also drive the first of my nails into her heart. The next morning, I woke up on time, refreshed and clear-headed. Beside me, Isabella was still unconscious, tear tracks on her eyelashes, her face pale from the alcohol and the drugs. I got up and dressed. I took the half-empty, spiked bottle of water from the nightstand, screwed the cap on tight, and put it in my pocket. Then I took a pen and wrote a note on the hotel notepad, leaving it on the pillow next to her. A lot of firsts. Not bad. We should study again sometime. Signed, L. I walked out of the room. My steps were steady as I headed to school, to the exam room for the second round of practice SATs. A week later, the sunlight was blinding. A crowd was gathered around the bulletin board where the scores were posted. A red paper with names in gold. First place, Leo Carter, 1590. A full 40 points higher than the second place score, which belonged to Ethan Vance. The huge gap was a silent, brutal slap in the face to everyone. The air went still. Then a huge buzz erupted. It's him again. 1590. Is he even human? Ethan looks like he's going to be sick. I stood at the edge of the crowd, watching calmly. I felt nothing. I was just taking back what was mine. The $30,000 scholarship was secure. The money for my grandfather's checkup and initial treatment was there. I could feel a venomous stare locked on my back. I didn't need to turn around to know it was Ethan. His expression right now must be priceless. Another gaze was far more complicated. It came from Isabella, standing not far away. She stared at the list, her face pale, her fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. Her eyes were a mix of shock, disappointment, and the flustered, shameful memory of that night in the hotel. Her mission had failed again, and this time, she had lost herself in the process. As expected, after school, Ethan pulled her into a corner. Hashtag 37, even from distance. I could feel his suppressed rage and cold accusations. Isabella kept her head down, her shoulders shaking, like a delicate flower being battered by a storm. A little while later, she emerged, looking lost, her eyes red. When she saw me, her gaze darted away, and she tried to walk around me. Isabella, I stopped her. Her body tensed. She stopped but didn't turn around. What do you want? Her voice was tearful and defiant. I walked over and stood in front of her. She was forced to look up, her eyes swimming in tears, a picture of tragic beauty. But I knew how much calculation was hidden beneath that fragile exterior. Did he yell at you again? I asked. She bit her lip, silent, as more tears fell. Is it worth it being his attack dog? My voice was flat, but my words hit her like a hammer. What are you in his eyes? A useful tool? Or a useless one? That's not true. We're engaged. I cut her off with a scoff. It's a business arrangement, nothing more. Do you really think you're more important to him than his obsession with his perfect image? My words were like knives, accurately piercing the bubble of self-deception she lived in. Her face grew even paler, her lips trembled, and she tried to argue but couldn't find the words. Because she knew, deep down, that I was right. And look at your own family. I took a step closer, my gaze sharp. The heiress of the Rossi family is your older, legitimate sister, isn't it? She gets all the love, all the attention. The family business will be hers one day. And you, the daughter from a different mother. Your only value is this marriage alliance, to solidify the connection with the Vance family. What happens when you're no longer useful? Or when Ethan finds a more suitable bride? Isabella, are you really content with being an accessory your whole life? A pawn that can be sacrificed and discarded at any moment? Hashtag 38. Every word struck her most sensitive, most fearful nerves. She snapped her head up, her eyes filled with shock, fear, and a spark of ignited rebellion. How do you know all that? How could a charity case like me know the hidden secrets of her family? How I know isn't important, I said, looking into her eyes. What's important is, do you want to change your situation? What if I told you I could help you? Help me. She looked at me as if I were insane. How could you help me? By getting a good score on a test. Leo, you have no idea how these families work. There's a $300 million trust fund in a Swiss bank account. The beneficiary is your sister, Gianna Rossi. Your father, Marco Rossi, set it up last year using the name of his personal assistant, a man named Paul Weber. I interrupted her calmly, revealing a secret I had overheard from a drunk Isabella in my past life. A secret that could tear the Rossi family apart. I bet even your clever stepmother doesn't know about that. Does she? Isabella looked as if she had been struck by lightning. She stumbled back, staring at me as if I were a monster. Her face was as white as a sheet, her breathing ragged. That secret, It was devastating. If it got out, her father's reputation, the infighting in her family. She was trembling all over. "Oh, who are you?" "Someone who can help you." I softened my tone, a hint of temptation in my voice. "Work with me. We'll take down Ethan Vance, and I'll help you get what you deserve from the Rossi family. Maybe even more. I will respect you." I reached out and gently wiped a tear from her cheek, my touch possessing a dominant, possessive quality. Compared to Ethan, who treats you like a dog, with me, at least you could be a person. Partner. ####39. She stood frozen, not pulling away. A fierce battle raged in her eyes. Fear, temptation, resentment, uncertainty about the future, and a deep, unsettling fear of me. Ethan's threats, her family's indifference, my mysterious and tempting offer. The scales were tipping violently. After a long moment, she squeezed her eyes shut and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, there was a new, desperate resolve in them. I need time." "Fine." I withdrew my hand. "But I need to see some good faith. For starters, stop having me watched like a prisoner." She bit her lower lip and finally gave a barely perceptible nod. Then, as if afraid she would change her mind, she turned and ran, stumbling as she went. Watching her fleeing figure, I knew the nail was in. She hadn't completely turned, but the dam in her heart had cracked. "Ethan Vance, the weapon you sent me will soon be pointed back at you. I can't wait." Ping. The text alert for the $30,000 scholarship deposit was the sweetest sound in the world. I practically ran out of school and straight to the hospital's billing department. "I'm here to make a payment. Frank Carter, for the initial liver transplant costs." I handed over my debit card, my fingers trembling slightly with excitement. $25,000. As the transaction went through, it felt like a piece of my heart was being torn out, but was replaced by something much greater: hope. My grandfather could be saved. After settling the bill, I went straight to the lead surgeon's office. "Doctor, I've paid the deposit. When can we do the compatibility testing? Is there any news on a donor liver?" The doctor adjusted his glasses, his gaze evasive as he shuffled through an empty file folder. "Yes, Leo. Well, donor organs are very scarce. There's a waiting list." "How long is the wait?" I pressed. "It's hard to say. It could be a few months, or it could be longer," he said vaguely. "Just be patient. We'll notify you when we have news." My stomach dropped. Something was wrong. ###40. In my past life, even though I didn't have the money, I had done my research. This private hospital was famous for its extensive network and fast organ matching. As long as you had the money, their pre-op time was the shortest in the city. I played it cool and didn't ask any more questions. I went to the nurse's station instead. Under the guise of asking about post-op care, I struck up a conversation with a young nurse, discreetly slipping her a $100 bill. "Could you do me a huge favor? I just want to know roughly where my grandfather, Frank Carter, is on the transplant list. Just so I have an idea." The young nurse hesitated, then quickly glanced at her computer screen and lowered her voice. "That's weird. The system shows a record of a potential preliminary match for your grandfather. Why would the doctors say there's nothing?" She didn't finish. A stern-looking head nurse shot her a sharp glare. The young nurse immediately clammed up and pretended to be busy. There was a record, but they told me there was nothing. My heart sank like a stone. Ethan Vance. It had to be him. This hospital. It all clicked. Fragmented memories from my past life pieced themselves together. The largest shareholder of this high-end private hospital was the Vance family. He had cut off the organ supply. He was going to let my grandfather die on the waiting list. Just like last time, rage, hot as lava, surged through me, threatening to burn away my reason. But I forced myself to stay calm. Making a scene wouldn't help. Begging would be even more useless. Ethan was waiting to see me break down in despair. Transfer hospitals? I'd already asked. The $25,000 deposit, once paid, was non-refundable. It was in the contract, and I couldn't come up with another $25,000, and we were out of time. My grandfather's condition could worsen at any moment. I had to find another way. A public hospital. The waiting list was longer, the process stricter, but as long as there was a chance, there was hope. But in my grandfather's current state, a normal waiting list was a death sentence. I needed to get him on a priority list. I needed special access, and a poor student like me What kind of special access could I get? But I knew someone who was desperate for a much bigger payoff. I took out my phone and dialed the number on the business card. Detective Volkov, I want to make a deal. Half an hour later, we met in a private room at a quiet tea house. Volkov was in civilian clothes, his eyes still sharp, but weary and suspicious. What kind of deal? He got straight to the point. I'll help you find the key to your wife's disappearance. I looked him in the eye. And you'll help me get my grandfather transferred to City General and get him on the priority list for a liver transplant. As fast as possible. Volkov leaned forward abruptly, his eyes turning predatory, as if he wanted to devour me whole. What did you say? You have a lead. Elysium, I said, naming the club. Volkov's pupils constricted. His fists clenched. It was the Vance family's most exclusive, most secret high-end club, and one of the city's biggest black holes of illegal activity. He had tried to investigate it countless times, always hitting a dead end. Be specific, he rasped, his voice thick with suppressed excitement and rage. I can only tell you that your wife's disappearance was connected to a special client on the subterranean level of Elysium. They have a hidden transport channel for special cargo. I used fragments of memory from my past life, vague enough to be deniable, but specific enough to ignite his imagination. You'll have to find the rest yourself. It was a long shot, but it was bait he couldn't refuse. He stared at me, trying to see through me. His breathing was heavy. After a few minutes, he slammed his fist on the table. The teacup rattled. Done, he said, his voice a low growl. I'll arrange the transfer, the priority access. But Leo, his eyes locked onto mine like a hawk. If you're lying to me, if I'm lying to you, my grandfather won't survive the surgery, and you can bury me with him. My vow was so absolute, so grim, that it seemed to startle him. The suspicion in his eyes lessened slightly. Tomorrow morning, I'll arrange for an ambulance and have the specialist at City General on standby. He stood up, his professional demeanor returning. Be ready. He turned and strode out, his back straight, radiating the energy of a man about to tear something apart. I leaned back in my chair, my own back soaked in cold sweat. Using a man's obsession with his missing wife was a dangerous game, but I had no other choice. And I wasn't lying. In my past life, his wife really had escaped from Elysium, but she was caught soon after and was never seen again. 2 days later, my grandfather was successfully transferred to City General Hospital. The priority access was granted, specialists were consulted, and the matching process was fast-tracked. A ray of hope finally pierced through the darkness. But Ethan's retaliation came faster and harder. He had clearly found out about the hospital transfer through his family's network. Since he couldn't cut off the organ supply, he switched tactics, aiming to destroy the very foundation of my ability to study. The pressure on Isabella intensified. She started contacting me more and more frequently. Her voice on the phone was strained, on the verge of tears, filled with a desperate anxiety. Leo, come shopping with me. That new mall just opened. Leo, let's go to karaoke tonight. I'm in a really bad mood. Leo, stop studying. Just come to the hotel with me. Her excuses were flimsy, her objective nakedly obvious. She had to drag me away from my books, to tie me to her side, to waste every precious minute before the next exam. Ethan's orders were clear. Before the third practice SAT, I was not to touch a textbook. I agreed. Every single time. Okay, where? I'm on my way. My responses were so quick, they even seemed to surprise her. And so, a strange routine began. In a luxurious shopping mall, she would cling to my arm, guiding me through high-end boutiques, trying to dazzle me with glamour. And I would be holding a coffee, my eyes glazing over the astronomical price tags, while silently reciting Shakespearean sonnets in my head, or mentally working through a multi-step physics problem. Leo, do you like this purse? She would ask, holding up a limited edition bag that cost more than my grandfather's future surgery. Yeah, it's nice. I'd nod, my mind on electromagnetic induction. The rate of change of magnetic flux. What did you say? I said, you look nice in that dress. I'd cover, my fingers unconsciously tracing the direction of the Lorentz force in the air. She would pout, sensing my distraction, but unable to call me out on it. In a loud, flashy karaoke bar, she would press up against me, pouring me drinks, feeding me fruit, her body language a symphony of seduction. And I would lean back on the sofa, my eyes closed, pretending to enjoy the music. In reality, I was building molecular models of organic compounds in my mind, or reviewing the timeline of major historical events. "Leo, sing a song," she'd plead, holding a microphone to my lips. I'd open my eyes, take the microphone, and begin reciting the Gettysburg Address in a perfect, emotionless monotone. "And that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." The room would fall silent. Her friends would stare at me like I was an alien. Isabella's smile would freeze on her face. "What were you doing?" "Practicing my public speaking," I'd say, putting the microphone down with an air of complete seriousness. Our most frequent destination, however, was a hotel. This was what Ethan considered his ultimate weapon, using sex and desire to drain me of all my energy. The moment we were in the room, she would be all over me, kissing me, undressing me, her eyes hazy with manufactured lust, trying to pull me into a vortex of pleasure. And I, more dominant, more forceful than ever before, would take complete control. I would throw her onto the bed and look down at her. "What did you study today?" I'd ask, my fingers tracing her collarbone. She would be completely baffled. The formulas for trigonometric identities. Recite them." "You can't." I'd sneer, my actions turning punitive. "Then we'll keep going until you can." Our encounters became a bizarre form of tutoring and obedience training. The intense physical pleasure was mixed with a humiliating sense of being controlled and a strange, perverse thrill. She would cry and beg for me to stop, yet she couldn't help but be drawn into it. When it was over, she would be limp and spent, staring blankly at the ceiling. And I would get up, take the hotel notepad and pen, lean against the headboard, and start writing out the concepts I had just quizzed her on, or solving a complex math problem. The sound of the pen scratching on paper, in a room still thick with the aftermath of sex, was surreal. You're a monster," she would whisper, looking at my profile, her voice raw. Her eyes were a complex mix of fear, confusion, and annoyance at being ignored. But deep down, there was a flicker of being completely, utterly captivated by this powerful, strange man. She had never met anyone like me. The rich boys she knew either worshipped her or just wanted to use her body. But I was like an iceberg, immovable and deep. One moment, a savage predator, the next, a cold, detached scholar. She couldn't figure me out, which only made her fall deeper. The day before the third practice exam, in the hotel room, after another intense session, she was so exhausted she could barely lift a finger, curled up on the bed. As usual, I got up, took out my notes, and prepared to study. She suddenly reached out and grabbed my wrist. Her voice was soft, hesitant, and tinged with desperation. "Leo, the exam is tomorrow." "Ethan, I know." I cut her off, looking down at her. "You need me to fail. That's your mission." Her eyes flew open, and she stared at me in disbelief, her face turning white. But do you want me to fail?" I leaned over her, my eyes boring into hers. "Isabella, look at me and answer the question." Her body trembled, and a war raged in her eyes. Ethan's threats, her family's expectations, and the fear, dependence, and twisted attraction I had instilled in her over the past few weeks. Finally, she squeezed her eyes shut. She buried her face in the pillow, her voice a broken, muffled sob. I don't know, stop pressuring me." I looked at her trembling back. I knew it was almost time. The nail was in deep. It just needed one final tap. I didn't push her any further. I just gently patted her back. "Get some sleep." Then, I sat in the armchair by the window. In the dim light, I reviewed my physics notes, which I already knew by heart. I was calm. Every concept from 3 years of high school was already etched into my brain since my rebirth. Did Ethan really think he could stop me just by keeping me away from my books? Pathetic. This whole distraction was just me studying in a different location. As for Isabella, I glanced at the trembling figure on the bed. She was just one push away from completely switching sides. One final push that would make her lose all hope in Ethan Vance. And it was coming soon. The results of the third practice SAT were a public monument to Ethan Vance's failure. Leo Carter, 1600. A perfect score. Another blindingly obvious first place. The scholarship was mine. Again, Another payment toward my grandfather's treatment was secured. Hope, like a stubborn weed, was forcing its way through the cracks in the concrete. But I knew Ethan's patience was gone. His perfectionism, his pride, had been repeatedly stomped on and crushed by the bug from the projects. Conventional methods had failed. He was going to play his deadliest card. The most vicious, most final solution. In my past life, this was the move that cast me into hell. The night before the final exams, my parents. Sleeping pills. $100,000 to sell their son. And the black van from Elysium waiting in the darkness. The cold dread and overwhelming hatred washed over me again. But this time I was ready. The afternoon before the SATs, I told my parents I was going to a final review session at school. But I didn't go far. I hid in a concealed corner near our building and turned on my phone. The screen split to show live feeds from several miniature cameras I had secretly installed in our apartment a few days earlier. The bloody lesson from my past life had taught me not to have a single shred of hope for my so-called family. Sure enough, on the screen, a man in a black suit with a cold expression appeared. He knocked on our door and began speaking in low tones with my pathetic parents. My father was wringing his hands, his face a mask of greed and servility. My mother's eyes were gleaming, fixated on the thick briefcase in the man's hand. Muffled words came through the hidden microphone. 100,000. Cash. Make sure he gets a good night's sleep. You don't need to worry about what comes next. Don't worry, the dose is strong enough. He won't be waking up. The van from Elysium. Midnight tonight, at the end of the alley. Every word was like a poison-tipped icicle stabbing into my heart. Even though I had expected it, seeing this naked, shameless evil, the willingness to sell your own child for money, made my blood run cold. The man in black left the money in a small bag of white powder, and then he was gone. My parents held the money, their faces alight with a suppressed, manic joy, as if they had won the lottery, not sold their son. It was time. I took a deep breath, pushing down the urge to kill, and quickly went upstairs. I unlocked the door with my key. I was home earlier than expected. My parents were frantically trying to hide the money, their faces plastered with unnatural, fake smiles. Leo, you're back. I thought you were at school. The teacher had an emergency. My tone was flat. My eyes scanned the pot of chicken soup simmering on the stove. Smells good. I couldn't remember the last time my mother had cooked for me. My mother's face lit up, and she hurried to ladle a bowl of soup, her smile grotesque. Yes, I made it just for you, for the big day tomorrow, to build up your strength. Here, drink it while it's hot. Beneath her attentiveness was a desperate, venomous intent. Thanks, Mom. I smiled a grateful smile, took the bowl, and set it on the table. It's a little hot. I'm just going to use the bathroom first. I went into the bathroom, closed the door, and locked it. I quickly took out the items I had prepared, a bag of crushed-up calcium supplements that looked identical to the powder they were given, and another bag with the real sleeping pills. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady as a rock. I only had one chance. I came out of the bathroom and walked straight toward the kitchen. Leo, honey, what are you? My parents were shocked to see me heading for the kitchen. I made an excuse about getting a spoon, and with my back to them, I stealthily swapped the bag of powder hidden in the cabinet. Then, I casually walked out as if nothing had happened. 15 minutes later, Leo, dinner's ready. My parents' faces were beaming. They were ready. Dad, Mom, you've been working hard all day. You should have some too. Let me get it for you, I said, walking toward the pot. No. We already ate. This is just for you. My mother tried to stop me, but I was faster. I had already picked up the ladle and 2 empty bowls. As their attention was on me, I palmed the real sleeping pill powder. As I reached for the water pitcher, I deftly sprinkled the powder into it. The movement was lightning fast, over in the blink of an eye. It's okay. You eat first. We'll have some later. My mother, afraid of any complications, snatched the bowls from me and filled one with soup. All right. Well, you guys should at least have some water, I said, playing the part of the filial son, and poured them each a glass of water from the pitcher. Then, right in front of them, I picked up the now-safe bowl of soup. Thanks, Mom and Dad. I appreciate it. I drank it all, down to the last drop. I even smacked my lips. Delicious. They watched me intently. They glanced at the glasses of water I had poured for them. They exchanged a look of relief and sly joy. Good. Now that you've eaten, Go rest. My father urged, picking up his own glass and taking a large gulp, as if to calm his nerves. My mother also took a few sips, smiling. I sat on the sofa, pretending to read. I was silently counting down. 10 minutes later, the drug took effect. My father's eyes glazed over first. The glass slipped from his hand and crashed to the floor. His head lolled to the side, and he collapsed onto the sofa, snoring loudly. My mother tried to say something, but her words were slurred, her eyelids heavy. She soon slumped in her chair, unconscious. Their breathing was heavy. They were completely out. I looked at their comatose forms, my eyes cold, feeling nothing. Parricide, no. You were the ones who raised a knife to me first. I stood up. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain slightly. In the dark alley below, a black, unmarked van was parked silently. The time was 8:50 p.m. almost time. The men Ethan had sent to collect the goods. A cold smile touched my lips. I took one last look at this so-called home. Then, I picked up the backpack I had prepared, which contained my admission ticket and exam supplies. I quietly opened the door, went downstairs, and melted into the night, leaving through a side exit. I headed for a cheap motel I had booked nearby. The motel room was small and cramped, with a musty smell. I closed my eyes and waited. 9:30 p.m. ping. A text from Isabella. Imperial Lounge, VIP Booth 8. A cold, dark smile spread across my face. Ethan, the special gift you prepared for me in my last life. I'm returning it to you. That night, at the Imperial Lounge, the music was a physical force, the lights a dizzying, multicolored chaos. Ethan had booked the most expensive VIP booth, number 8, and was celebrating with his sycophantic friends. A champagne tower stood tall, and the air was thick with cigar smoke. He had his arm around a surgically enhanced Instagram model, a look of smug satisfaction on his face, as if he could already see my tragic end. A toast to getting rid of some annoying trash, he shouted, and his friends eagerly echoed him. His bodyguards stood like black rocks, their eyes scanning the crowd. I was wearing a nondescript hoodie, the hood pulled low, a ghost moving through the edges of the chaos. My eyes locked onto a young, tired-looking waiter navigating the crowd with a tray. He looked young, his eyes weary from a long shift, a red mark on his wrist from where a customer had probably grabbed him. He was the one. I followed him into a quiet service corridor. As he set down his tray to take a breath, I approached. Hey man, want to make a deal? He jumped, looking at me warily. Who are you? I didn't waste time. I pulled a thick envelope from my pocket and pressed it into his hand. It was heavy with cash. $5,000. Almost everything I had left. His eyes widened, his breathing quickened. He instinctively tried to push it away, but his fingers tightened around the envelope. What? What is this for? It's simple, I said, my voice low, leaning in close. VIP Booth 8. The Vance kid. The waiter's face paled, and his hand trembled, nearly dropping the envelope. What? What do you want me to do? I can't mess with him. You don't have to, I said, producing a small, clear bag containing a colorless, odorless, powerful laxative powder. Find a way to put this in his drink, or any drink he has. Then forget this ever happened. Are you crazy? No way. That could kill him, he whispered, trying to shove the envelope back at me. It won't kill him. At worst, it'll give him a bad case of diarrhea. Humiliate him a little. I held his hand firm, my eyes cold. $5,000. That's more than you make in half a year, right? Just a little stomach trouble. No one will ever know. Or, my voice dropped. I could just call the manager over right now and tell him you've been stealing the expensive liquor. I glanced at the half-empty bottle of high-end scotch he had stashed in a corner. The waiter's face went white as a sheet, and cold sweat poured down his face. He looked at the envelope in his hand, then at me, a fierce battle raging in his eyes. Greed versus fear. In the end, greed and the desperate desire to change his circumstances won. He snatched the small bag of powder, shoved it into his pocket, and clutched the envelope tightly. Just this once. If anything happens, I don't know anything. Of course. I nodded, stepping back into the shadows. I'll be waiting. I hid in a blind spot and waited, like a predator in the tall grass. 10 minutes later, I saw the waiter carrying a tray of drinks to Ethan's booth. Ethan was in high spirits, carelessly accepting a fresh glass of whiskey. He toasted his friends and downed it in one go. Perfect. The laxative worked faster than I had anticipated. Less than 20 minutes later, Ethan shot up, clutching his stomach, and rushed toward the restrooms, his face pale. His bodyguards followed. Once, twice, 3 times. He was in and out, each time looking worse, his face growing paler, his legs unsteady. The Instagram model tried to help him, but he shoved her away in irritation. The party atmosphere turned awkward. His friends exchanged glances, wanting to laugh but not daring to. The bodyguard attention was focused on their boss's predicament, their vigilance slipping. Now, I had already acquired a janitor's uniform and cap. Wearing a face mask, I pushed a large trash bin, my head down, and headed for the restrooms. A bodyguard glanced at me, but paid me no mind. I entered the restroom. Ethan was weakly hunched over a toilet in one of the stalls, dry heaving. His face was a sickly green, his expensive suit wrinkled, his designer shoes on the wet floor. All his usual arrogance and grace were gone. He looked like a pathetic, sick animal. He heard me come in and looked up, waving a weak, irritated hand. Get out. I didn't get out. Instead, I locked the main restroom door. Click. He realized something was wrong and tried to shout, but it was too late. I lunged forward. I pressed the rag I had prepared, soaked in a powerful anesthetic, over his mouth and nose from behind. He struggled, but the violent diarrhea had drained him of all his strength. His resistance was feeble. A few seconds later, his body went limp and he passed out. I worked quickly. I covered him with a large black plastic bag. I stuffed him into the large green trash bin. I covered him with a layer of actual bathroom trash. I dragged the bin out of the restroom. The bodyguards at the door, distracted by the women at the bar, glanced at me and moved aside. I dragged the trash bin down the corridor, out the back door of the Loud Club. I shoved him into the beat-up van I had rented and parked in the alley. I started the engine and drove toward that all-too-familiar place, my home. The apartment was silent. My parents were still deeply unconscious. I dragged the unconscious Ethan into my small room and dumped him on the floor. I put a black hood over his head and secured his hands and feet with zip ties. Then, I changed my clothes and sat on the bed, waiting, like a hunter waiting for his prey. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. The time for the Elysium pickup was approaching. Ethan Vance, the grand feast you arranged. Enjoy it yourself. At 11:50 p.m., in the light-swallowing darkness below, 2 dim headlights appeared, right on schedule. The time was exactly the same as in my last life. On the floor, Ethan was still unconscious. His breathing was shallow under the black hood. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by my faded, cheap old clothes and worn-out sneakers. Curled up in the shadows, he looked just like any other piece of cargo to be disposed of. I checked the zip ties on his hands one last time. They were tight. He wouldn't be getting out. My heart pounded in my chest, not from fear, but from the suppressed, explosive thrill of revenge. In my last life, this was the van. It dragged me to that hellhole, where I was subjected to the inhuman, brutal abuse of 33 wealthy women. My body was destroyed, my dignity shattered. The tearing pain, the cold despair, was carved into my very soul. Now, Ethan Vance, it's your turn to have a taste. I took a deep breath, calming the storm inside me. I had to be fast, precise. No mistakes. The Elysium crew was cautious. I bent down and roughly hoisted Ethan onto my shoulder. His body was a dead weight. Step by step, I descended the creaking old stairs. I pushed open the main door. The cold night air rushed in, carrying the sour smell of garbage. The black van in the alley was like a silent coffin, waiting for its cargo. The window rolled down a crack. A pair of emotionless eyes looked out. They fell on me and the figure on my shoulder. Cold, assessing. I kept my head down, my hat pulled low. I mimicked the timid, yet greedy and fawning tone of my gambling-addicted father. I spoke in a raspy voice. Got him here. The rest of the money. The window rolled all the way down. A man in a black suit with an earpiece handed over a briefcase, his face blank, identical to the one my parents had received. Is he out? His voice was a low, gravelly rasp. Don't worry. Heavy dose, he's out cold. I took the briefcase, my fingers trembling slightly from excitement and hatred. But I disguised it as a greedy tremor. The man's gaze swept over the figure on my shoulder again. Seeing the shabby clothes and the unconscious state, he wasn't suspicious. He had seen this kind of domestically sourced product many times before. He gestured to the back of the van. "Get him in." I pulled open the heavy, sliding door. The interior smelled of cold leather and a strange perfume. Another muscular man sat inside, his eyes lifeless. I struggled to shove Ethan into the back seat. The muscular man dragged him in like a sack of potatoes and threw him on the floor. Rough, without a shred of pity, just like they had treated me. The door slammed shut, sealing the van. The engine let out a low growl, and the black vehicle slipped silently into the night, disappearing quickly, as if it had never been there. I stood there, holding the briefcase of money from selling myself. The cold night wind blew, kicking up dust. The alley was empty, leaving only the sound of my own heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. The heavy drumbeat of revenge in the dead of night. Time ticked by 1 second at a time. I sat in the cold, dark room. The only light was the faint glow of my phone screen, illuminating my expressionless face. I was waiting for a signal, waiting for the inevitable storm. Fragmented memories from my past life pieced themselves together in my mind. Elysium, Sublevel 3, the Pleasure Dome, not open to the public, the hunting ground for wealthy women, and the hidden transport channel for special cargo that led even deeper. Volkov's wife, that brave female officer. She had gone undercover there for months. She had obtained crucial evidence, but was caught by Vance family gunmen while trying to escape, her blood staining the street. Her body wasn't found until a week later, downstream in the river. It was the wound that would never heal for Volkov, and it was the most powerful explosive to detonate the Vance family. I estimated that enough time had passed. Ethan should now be in the paradise he had created. I picked up the old phone. I dialed Volkov's private number. ####55. He answered almost instantly. His voice was a low growl, thick with suppressed rage and anxiety, like a caged beast. "Who is this?" He clearly hadn't slept. He might have even heard through his channels that something unusual was happening at Elysium tonight. "Detective Volkov." My voice was a low, raspy whisper. "The person you're looking for is in Elysium, Sublevel 3, in a hidden room behind the Eden Suite. Believe it or not." I hung up before he could respond. I took out the battery, snapped the SIM card, and threw the pieces out the window into different trash cans below. After that, I leaned against the wall and slowly exhaled. The seed had been planted. On the other side of town, Volkov stared at the dead line, his eyes instantly bloodshot. His wife, the Eden Suite, a hidden room. Every word was a hammer blow to his heart. He had to check it out, even if there was only a 1 in a million chance. Like an enraged lion, he burst out of his office, roaring orders, gathering every trusted officer he could find. Emergency raid. Target. Elysium. Full authorization. Anyone who obstructs will be treated as an accomplice. Police sirens wailed, tearing through the city's night sky. The convoy of police cars shot toward the long-standing den of vice. At the entrance of Elysium, security guards who tried to block them were met with the butts of rifles. "Police, everyone on the ground, don't move." Volkov, his eyes red, led the charge. Ignoring the screams and chaos, guided by instinct and the phone call, he headed straight for Sublevel 3. ###56 the Eden Suite. He kicked open the door. Inside were several half-dressed, panicked wealthy women and male escorts. Volkov's eyes, sharp as a hawk's, instantly locked onto a strange oil painting on the wall. He ripped it aside, and there it was, a hidden door, with a keypad lock. Breaching team. Boom! The door was blasted open, revealing an even more lavish, more depraved space beyond, and a corridor leading deeper into the darkness. Gunshots, screams, shouted commands erupted from within. In the chaos, Volkov charged forward like a madman. At the end of a narrow transport tunnel, he saw her. A woman, battered and bruised, her clothes torn, but her eyes shining with a fierce light. She was holding a pistol she had clearly just taken in a standoff with a man in a black suit. It was her. It was really her. She was alive. Anna. Volkov let out a heart-wrenching roar and fired a single, precise shot, taking down the man. He rushed forward and swept his trembling wife into his arms. When she saw him, tears streamed down her face. But she bit her lip, and from a hidden pocket in her undergarments, she pulled out a small, blood-stained microdrive. She pressed it into his hand. "Jack, go. The evidence. It's all here. Forced prostitution, organ trafficking." And she passed out from blood loss and exhaustion before she could finish. Volkov held his wife tight, clutching the warm, blood-soaked drive. He let out a roar that was a mixture of grief and pure, unadulterated rage. "The Vance family. I'll kill every last one of you. Arrest everyone. Secure all evidence. I don't want a single fly to get out of here." That night, the city of Northbridge was turned upside down. Police cars surrounded the lavish Elysium Club. A massive amount of damning evidence was seized. Countless clients and employees were taken into custody. The news spread like wildfire, impossible to contain. For the first time, a bloody gash had been torn into the side of the colossal Vance family empire. And at the same time, in the VIP wing of the city's best private hospital, Ethan Vance woke up. ####57. The lower half of his body was wrapped in thick gauze. The searing pain and the feeling of emptiness made him let out an inhuman scream. My. He instantly understood what had happened. The ultimate humiliation and rage consumed him. Leo Carter. It was Leo Carter. He did this to me. He thrashed wildly in his bed, screaming, a man gone insane. "Kill him, Dad, Mom. Kill his whole family. I want him dead." The upper echelons of the Vance family were in an uproar. The storm began to turn, aiming for the one they believed to be the source of all their problems. Me. But I had already taken a leave of absence from school for illness. I had become a drop of water in the ocean. I knew that the evidence in Volkov's hands and the political capital from rescuing his wife would be enough to fend off the Vance family's initial counterattack. But it wasn't enough. The Vance family's roots ran too deep. Cutting off one branch wouldn't kill the tree. They would soon retaliate with overwhelming force. In the VIP hospital room, Ethan's screams were unending, like a castrated, dying beast. Pain, humiliation, and the blurred, grotesque faces of 33 wealthy women playing on a loop in his mind, driving him to the brink of insanity. "Find him! Find him!" He smashed everything within reach, his eyes bloodshot and bulging. "Who put me in that van? Check the lounge's security footage, the traffic cameras. I want him dead." The Vance family's resources, when mobilized, were terrifying. Soon, fragmented pieces of information were gathered. The blurry security footage from outside the restroom at the Imperial Lounge. It showed a figure in a janitor's uniform. The hat was pulled low, but the build. It looked like Leo Carter. A hidden private security camera in the alley near my apartment building had caught the black van, and a figure in shabby clothes, carrying the cargo to the van. It looked even more like Leo Carter. ###58 add to that the fact that my parents had conveniently passed out that night. Too many coincidences all pointed to me. When Ethan was briefed, he was almost 100% certain it was me. "It was him. It was really him," he shrieked, only calming down after being given a powerful sedative. "Kill him. Go now. I want him cut into a million pieces." The Vance family's assassins began to move like hunting dogs, silently slipping into the city's shadows, searching for me. The pressure, immense pressure, was closing in from all sides. I knew the Vance family would find me soon. They didn't need courtroom evidence. They only needed suspicion. I had to give them a bigger problem, a problem that would consume them, leaving them no time to deal with me. This time, I sent a photo to Volkov, a blurry photo of Ethan's father, Richard Vance, looking dazed, holding a pipe and a piece of tinfoil. A photo I had Isabella take when he had let his guard down. Only their family's long-standing relationship would have allowed for such a moment of carelessness. When Volkov received this gift, he was already frustrated by the immense resistance he was facing with the Elysium case. The Vance family was using all its influence to minimize the damage, trying to pin the blame on a few scapegoats. When he saw the email, his eyes lit up, especially at the photo of Richard Vance doing drugs. This was a direct attack on the head of the Vance family. He acted immediately. On one hand, he selectively leaked some of the most shocking details from the Elysium case to several powerful, well-connected media outlets. On the other hand, he dispatched his best plainclothes team to tail Richard Vance 24/7. Hashtag 59. The storm escalated instantly. The dark secrets of Elysium were exposed to the nation. Billionaire's den of vice, playground for the elite, a hell for women. Shocking headlines, accompanied by partially censored but still horrifying evidence, ignited a firestorm of public outrage. This was a media tsunami the Vance family could not easily contain. At the same time, the plainclothes team successfully photographed Richard Vance's personal assistant meeting with a known drug dealer. Following the lead, they began to unravel a hidden drug distribution network. The trail led to a chemical plant on the south side of the city. The police raided the plant, but they were too late. The place was deserted, with only the faint traces of drug manufacturing equipment that hadn't been completely destroyed. The Vance family had clearly been tipped off and had cut their losses, destroying the most crucial evidence. Even though they hadn't busted the drug lab that would have definitively ended the Vance empire, the double blow of the Elysium scandal and the drug accusations against the family patriarch had sent the massive ship of the Vance family into a violent storm, threatening to capsize it at any moment. At the Vance family mansion, the atmosphere was as heavy as a tomb. Richard Vance's face was ashen as he watched the news reports and the flood of online condemnation. He hurled his glass against the wall, shattering it. Useless. All of them useless, he roared, his eyes holding the vacant look of a drug user mixed with panic. An emergency family meeting was held late into the night. Faced with overwhelming pressure and undeniable evidence, they made a cold, calculated decision to save the core of the Vance empire and its leader. They would cut off a limb to save the body. The next day, breaking news. The official head of Elysium, Richard Vance's younger brother, Jonathan Vance, had committed suicide at his home before the police could arrest him for his involvement in numerous serious crimes. He left behind a suicide note, taking full responsibility for everything. All the crimes were pinned on a dead man. The explosive Elysium case was brought to an abrupt, if temporary, close. The Vance family had paid a huge price, their reputation in tatters, their losses immense, but the core leadership had survived. In his hospital room, when Ethan learned that his uncle had become the scapegoat, he was so angry he almost coughed up blood. But he was not ready to give up. "Dad, even if Uncle Jonathan is dead, we can't let that bastard Leo Carter get away with this. He did this to me," he screamed into the phone. On the other end, Richard Vance's voice was tired and cold, with an authority that could not be questioned. "Shut up. Haven't you caused enough trouble? The whole country is watching us right now. You will behave yourself. Do not cause any more problems. As for that bastard, his time will come, but not now." The line went dead. Ethan stared at the phone, then resumed his frantic destruction of the room. But he knew his family's attention was now completely focused on damage control and dealing with the official investigation. They wouldn't be able to spare the resources to come after me for a while. His personal vendetta had to take a back seat to the family's survival. He paced his room like a caged animal, his eyes burning with helpless rage. I was hiding in a corner of the city, watching the news. Jonathan Vance's suicide. A neat trick, but it didn't matter. The first phase of my plan was complete. The Vance family's attention was diverted, buying me precious time. And the drug trafficking lead and the photo were like two grenades with the pins pulled, ready to be thrown back at the Vance family at the right moment. Ethan was like a wounded, rabid wolf, trapped in the gilded cage of his VIP hospital room. The family's warnings couldn't quell his bone-deep hatred. If he couldn't use official family resources, he would use his own personal funds and loyalists. Find him. Find that bastard. And find out everything you can about Volkov. They have to be connected. Hashtag 61, he hissed at his most trusted aide, his eyes red-rimmed. Hospital security footage. Phone records. Check on his parents. I want every single clue, no matter how small. Money talks. And soon, fragmented information started to come in. My contact with Volkov was extremely covert, but nothing is ever perfect. My phone records were illegally obtained. It was him. He's working with that damn cop. Ethan gritted his teeth, his face a mask of twisted joy and hatred. Leak this to my father. Accidentally, tell him the reason Volkov won't let us go is because he has an inside source. The storm was gathering again. I could feel the invisible net tightening. The Vance family had lost a limb, but it was still a formidable beast. I had to hit them again. Harder. I had to light a bigger fire, one that would throw them into complete chaos, leaving them no time for me. I set my sights on another of the Vance family's dirty, lucrative secrets. Their underground casino. In my last life, my gambling-addicted mother had often bragged about it. She said she would take me to see the real world, a place where even angels would be tempted to stay. It was the Vance family's most protected, most profitable, and most secret enterprise. A members-only, high-stakes casino that was the core of their money-laundering operations and their network of influence. The opportunity presented itself. I went back to my apartment, that cold, wreck space that felt more like a tomb than a home. When my mother saw me, she first jumped in fright. Then, a horribly unnatural, fawning smile spread across her face, a mixture of fear and a desire to please. El Leo, you're back. Are you okay? I don't know what happened the other day. Mom, that place you mentioned, the one that's really fun. Can we still go? #### 62. My mother paused, a strange light in her eyes, followed by a flicker of suspicion. Why? Why would you want to go to a place like that? To start over. I want to relax. I gave a slight smile. And I heard you can make a lot of money there. I want to earn some more for Grandpa's surgery. The word money was like a key, unlocking the greed in her heart. Her suspicion was overwhelmed by her desire for cash. She looked me up and down, as if assessing the risk. I can take you, but you have to do exactly as I say. No looking around, no asking questions. And if you win, you give me half. Deal. That night, we moved like thieves through the city. We took 3 different buses and finally got into an unmarked black van. The windows were completely blacked out. The driver, his face a blank mask, checked a black car my mother showed him before starting the engine. We drove for a long time, seemingly toward the outskirts of the city. Finally, we stopped at what looked like an abandoned warehouse. We got out and went inside. It was a different world. The moment the heavy, soundproof doors opened, a wall of noise hit me. The roar of the crowd, the sharp clatter of chips, the ecstatic or despairing cries of the gamblers, all mixed with the smell of smoke, alcohol, and perfume. The vast space was decorated in a gaudy, over-the-top style, all gold and glitter. There were countless gambling tables, and slot machines blinked with a hypnotic light. Waitresses in skimpy bunny costumes moved through the crowd with trays of drinks. The clientele were all well-dressed, clearly wealthy, their faces contorted with greed and excitement. This was the Vance family's den of iniquity, a furnace of desire. The moment my mother entered, she was like a fish back in water. Her eyes lit up, and she immediately ran to a slot machine, completely absorbed. I acted like a naive first-timer, looking around with wide-eyed curiosity. In reality, I was using my eidetic memory to record everything. The locations of the entrances and exits, the security guard patrols and shift changes, the camera blind spots, the routes to the VIP rooms. And most importantly, the exact location of this place. Through a crack in a fire exit door that was occasionally opened, I saw a landmark outside, a derelict water tower. Combining that with the direction we came from and the travel time, I had pinpointed the location. #### 63. I didn't stay long. I used the excuse of not feeling well to drag my mother away, who was already losing and cursing. We left the frenetic underground world. Back on the surface, the cold wind on my face felt unreal. The next day, a message was delivered to Detective Volkov. It contained only an address and a single sentence. Vance family's lifeline. Illegal gambling, money laundering. Act fast. My name is Leo Carter. I need protection. When Volkov received the message, he was still fuming about the Elysium case being prematurely closed. This new information was like a bolt of lightning in the dark. He clenched his fist, his eyes shining with a sharp, predatory light. While the Vance family, one day they're cutting off a limb to survive, the next they're throwing a party in their secret lair. This time, he learned his lesson. His actions were faster, more covert. He mobilized his most trusted officers, set up surveillance, obtained the highest level of authorization. A larger net was silently cast over the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Just when the Vance family thought they could catch their breath, another storm was brewing. And this time, it was aimed directly at their heart. That same day, a few unfamiliar faces appeared in my neighborhood. 3 days before the SAT scores were to be released, I returned to my apartment. I met with the plainclothes officers Volkov had sent. Ethan had indeed made a move. He had sent 2 knife-wielding thugs to attack me. They were apprehended by the officers protecting me. Unfortunately, the thugs refused to talk. I knew Ethan wouldn't give up. Sure enough, my mother was the first to show signs. She was no longer hiding her gambling chips. She just sat on the sofa, staring blankly, nervously picking at the foam in a tear in the cushion. My father was even more agitated. He paced the small living room like a caged animal in withdrawal. His eyes were cloudy with a desperate, all-or-nothing greed. They were waiting for the second payment and the new drugs Ethan had promised them. I knew it was coming soon. The next afternoon, they went out. When they returned, their faces were flushed with a sick, feverish excitement. They huddled in the kitchen, whispering, their eyes darting toward my room, like 2 rats plotting to devour their own young. Enough. This was enough. The illusion of family from this life and the last was completely shattered. All that was left was a disgusting, venomous calculation. I had considered leaving them one last way out, but not anymore. Since you insist on pointing the knife at me again and again, then don't blame me for sending you where you belong. I quietly locked my bedroom door. From under my bed, I pulled out a metal box I had hidden long ago. Inside was the evidence I had collected piece by piece like a scavenger. The used needles and blood-stained cotton balls my father had used for his drug injections and had failed to dispose of properly. The gambling chips with the casino's unique emblem and several loan shark IOUs that my mother had hidden in the lining of her old clothes. And the bag of sleeping pills I had kept after switching them. I carefully placed these items into 2 separate, clear evidence bags. My movements were as calm as if I were handling someone else's affairs. That evening, my mother, for the first time in a long time, cooked a full meal. "Leo, come eat." My father stood by, wringing his hands, his eyes urging me forward. "Eat well, sleep well." I looked at the table of delicious-smelling food. "Okay," I smiled, taking the bowl they offered. As they watched with anticipation, I walked to the table. And then I flipped it. Crash! The entire table of food, dishes and all, smashed to the floor. The smiles on my parents' faces froze, then twisted into pale, contorted masks. What? What are you doing? What am I doing? I turned, my eyes like ice, and held up the 2 evidence bags. "I'm sending you where you belong." When they saw what was in the bags, they looked as if they had seen a ghost. My father lunged at me, trying to grab them. "You little bastard! Where did you get?" I dodged him and took out my phone, dialing a number I had ready. "Hello, police? I'd like to report a crime. 5th Street, old tenement building, Unit 4B. There are people here using drugs and in possession of drug paraphernalia. Also, someone is involved in high-stakes illegal gambling, with hidden chips and illicit IOUs." My speech was fast and clear. My parents were hysterical. My mother screamed and tried to snatch my phone. My father, his eyes red, looked around for something to hit me with. But I was no longer the boy they could easily control. I pushed them away and finished my report to the police, then hung up. "The police will be here soon," I said, looking at them as if they were strangers. "Dad, enjoy rehab. Mom, you won't be going to the casino anymore. But I'm sure the gambling addiction support group will welcome you." My mother collapsed to the floor, wailing and cursing me. My father slumped into a chair as if his bones had been removed, his eyes vacant, muttering, "It's over. It's all over." A few minutes later, the wail of sirens grew closer. A sharp knock on the door. I calmly walked over and opened it. Uniformed police officers stood there, their faces stern. "Who called this in?" "I did," I said, stepping aside and pointing to the 2 broken figures inside and the evidence bags on the table. "The evidence is right there." The police entered, examined the evidence, and began questioning. Then they placed my ashen-faced father in handcuffs and restrained my screaming, struggling mother. "Son, thank you for your report," an older officer said, nodding at me, his expression complicated. "I was just doing my duty," I replied, my voice flat. The plainclothes officers who had been watching my apartment came in, looked around, but said nothing. I was asked to go to the station to give a statement. As I left, I looked back one last time at this place I had once called home. It was a wreck, filled with the sounds of desperate wails and the cold clinking of handcuffs. The sounds of my parents' cries as they were taken away in the police car seemed to echo in the stairwell. The apartment was finally empty, like a tomb, hollowed out, but I felt a strange sense of peace. I still had my grandfather, the old man who had held this family together. Now, there was only one thing left to do: the SATs. I knew Ethan would never let me walk into that exam room peacefully. A car crash. In my last life, he had used a similar tactic on a businessman who had crossed him. A runaway truck, an accidental collision. Simple, brutal, effective. The narrow, chaotic, poorly monitored street in front of my building was the perfect place for an accident. The night before the exam, I carefully checked my admission ticket and pencils. I put them in a small, waterproof bag. I didn't sleep in my cold, empty apartment. Instead, I found the cheapest motel nearby, one that required taking a different route to school, and rented a room for a few hours. I lay on the bed, fully clothed, resting my eyes. At 4 a.m., while it was still dark, I got up, grabbed my bag, and left the motel. I didn't take my usual route to school. Instead, I turned into an even more secluded alley. Then, I used a payphone to call a taxi. The corner of 5th Street, by the old tenement building. Yes, right now. I gave the address of my apartment building, but I was nowhere near it. At 4:40 a.m., a taxi, its vacant light on, slowly approached the corner. The driver looked around, confused, waiting for a passenger who never showed up. He started to turn around. At that exact moment, a heavy dump truck that had been parked on the side of the road, seemingly dormant, roared to life. Its engine let out a low, menacing growl. Like a steel beast awakened from its slumber, it suddenly swerved, aiming directly for the lone taxi, and slammed into it. The speed was incredible. It wasn't an accident. It was a premeditated attack. Crash! A massive sound tore through the early morning silence. The taxi was like a fragile toy, instantly crumpled and thrown onto its side, glass shattering everywhere. The dump truck barely slowed down. It rolled over the wreckage without hesitation and sped away, disappearing into the darkness. The whole thing took less than 10 seconds. Clean, efficient, deadly, leaving only the destroyed taxi behind. The plainclothes officers were startled awake, watching in stunned disbelief. In the distance, I could hear screams, followed by the wail of sirens. And me, I was sitting in another taxi I had pre-booked, waiting at a different corner, further away. Through the window, I watched the chaotic scene unfold from a distance. My palms were sweaty, but my eyes were ice. It had happened, just as I knew it would. "Take me to Crestwood Academy, please," I said to my driver. The driver had clearly heard the commotion. He muttered nervously, "Sounds like a bad accident over there." "Yeah, let's go." My voice was flat. The taxi started, avoiding the scene of the crash, and headed in the opposite direction. "Ethan Vance, you thought you could stop me like this? You were wrong. This only makes my steps into that exam room even more determined. The scholarship, I'm coming for it. And your life, I'm coming for that too." The gates of the testing center were just ahead. For 3 days, I was a machine, calmly and precisely answering every question. When I walked out of the final exam, the sun was bright. I felt no joy, only the quiet relief of a heavy burden being lifted, and a cold, premonitory sense of a final reckoning. The storm wasn't over. It was just gathering strength. Sure enough, the moment I turned on my old phone, which had been off during the exams, a flood of missed calls and texts from Isabella exploded onto the screen. He knows everything. "Leo, run, you have to run." The last text, sent just half an hour ago, was a desperate, tearful plea. His head of security, a guy they called Dragon, just left with the team. Run. Where could I run? I could hide, but not forever. I had to stop him and his enforcers before they could do any real damage. I immediately called Isabella back. She answered on the first ring. Her voice was a choked sob. "Leo, listen to me." My voice was cold as iron, without a hint of panic. "If you want to live, if you want to get what you deserve from your family, you will do exactly as I say. Right now, everything you just told me about Ethan sending Dragon and his men to hurt me, I want you to type it all out and send it anonymously to this number. No, I can't. The Vance family will kill me. Ethan is finished, and so is his family. I cut her off sharply. This is your last chance. You can go down with him, or you can live with me. There was a dead silence on the line, only the sound of her ragged breathing. After a few seconds, as if it took all her strength, she choked out. Okay, I'll send it. After you send it, keep watching Ethan. I want to know his every move. I hung up. I didn't waste a second. I flagged down a taxi. To the police station. As my taxi headed for the station, Detective Volkov received the anonymous text. The level of detail was stunning. Times, locations, personnel, vehicle information, even fragments of Ethan's orders. It was as if the sender had been in the room. Volkov looked at the text, then at me as I walked into his office, and his eyes widened. Hashtag, 69-inch, how did you? Detective, there's no time to explain, I interrupted. Ethan's men are on their way right now. Their target is a motel in the West Side Industrial District, a place I stayed at before. And I have an even bigger gift for you. A detailed floor plan of the Vance family's underground casino, including their security layout. I took a pen and paper from his desk. I quickly sketched out the layout, recreating every detail of that den of vice from memory. Volkov stared at the rapidly forming, terrifyingly accurate diagram. He stopped hesitating. He grabbed his radio, his voice like thunder. All units, emergency mobilization. Team 1, move out now. Target is the West Side Inn, go. Teams 2 and 3, full tactical gear. Target is the abandoned warehouse in the South Industrial Park. The underground casino. Full breach. I want that entire operation shut down now. The wail of sirens once again tore through the city. This time it was a full-scale assault. The outcome was never in doubt. Dragon and his elite security team had just arrived at the West Side Inn. They were swarmed by police and arrested on the spot. They were caught red-handed. In their vehicle, the police found machetes, gasoline, and even an illegal handgun. The evidence was undeniable. Meanwhile, Volkov himself led the raid on the casino. Using the map I provided, his team breached the facility with minimal resistance. The gamblers and Vance family managers inside were all arrested. A massive amount of cash, accounting books, and computer servers were seized. And in a dramatic twist, in a secret room in the back, they caught the Vance family's longtime butler, Richard Vance's most trusted man, in the act of trying to destroy the main ledgers. The old man's face was ashen. He knew it was all over. Hashtag 70. When the news reached the Vance mansion and the hospital, Richard Vance suffered a massive heart attack and was rushed into emergency surgery. In his hospital room, Ethan smashed everything he could reach. Then he collapsed to the floor like a puppet with its strings cut. His eyes were vacant, all the madness gone, replaced by the gray ash of despair. Volkov returned to the station, exhausted but triumphant. He looked at me in a completely new light. You kid. He shook his head, as if at a loss for words. Finally, he just clapped me hard on the shoulder. You did good. I knew the immediate danger was over. The great tree of the Vance family had been chopped down to its trunk, and it was teetering. The day the SAT scores were released, the website was jammed. I sat in the corner of an internet cafe and typed in my ID number. The page loaded spinning, and then a number appeared. 1580. State ranking, 1. I was the state champion. For a moment, my heart stopped. It wasn't joy, but a vast, hollow emptiness. Then, a tidal wave of grief and hatred washed over me. Grandpa, did you see? The news spread like a virus through the city. From rags to riches, the project kid who became state champion. 1580, a life-changing score. A miracle at Crestwood Academy. The media descended like sharks, smelling blood, surrounding my dilapidated apartment building and the hospital. Flowers, applause, praise, it all came flooding in. The school administrators were beaming. They immediately announced a $1 million scholarship in my name and treated me like a king. Everything seemed to be heading toward a happy ending. But I knew, the darkness doesn't give up that easily. Ethan wasn't dead yet. The Vance family hadn't completely fallen. They would never allow me to stand on the ruins of their empire and claim a victory. Sure enough, Overnight, the tide of public opinion began to turn. Hashtag 71A few of the smaller online news sites that have been praising me suddenly started publishing insidious articles. The secret behind the state champion. Did he have the questions in advance? Exclusive. Was the state champion seen leaving a Board of Education official's apartment? A drastic improvement. A closer look at the champion's inconsistent practice scores. Vicious speculation, veiled accusations, all designed to smear my name. At the same time, several so-called classmates gave anonymous interviews, claiming he was never that smart. What was his score on the last practice exam? Yeah, and he looked exhausted on the day of the test. Like he hadn't slept. How could he have scored so high? I heard he knows people in high places. They even found a janitor, who they paid to look honest and troubled, as he testified on camera that he had seen me sneaking around the administration building the night before the exam. An army of online trolls descended, fanning the flames. He definitely cheated. Investigate him. Take away his score. How could a kid from the projects beat someone like Ethan Vance, who had every advantage? Ethan's score was 1530. That's incredible. They should make them retake the test. The chorus of doubt and insults drowned out the praise. The school administrators who had been smiling at me were now looking at me with suspicion. The scholarship award ceremony was postponed. It seemed a powerful force was trying to strip away everything I had just gained and grind it into the dirt. In the corner of the internet cafe, I read the vicious comments, my face a blank mask. I almost wanted to laugh. Is that all you've got, Ethan? I didn't stay silent. I didn't offer a weak denial. I logged in my newly verified social media account. I posted a long article with an attached file. The title was simple. Everything about my 1580 SAT score. Hashtag 72. The content was the condensed version of the study journal I had been meticulously keeping since my rebirth. It included my daily study schedule from the first practice exam to the final test, my problem-solving strategies and unique shortcut techniques for every subject and question type, a comparative analysis of past SAT questions in this year's exam, which perfectly explained why my predictions have been so accurate, photos of all my practice exams, with the scores clearly visible, and my detailed notes on every question I got wrong. There were even a few photos of me studying in the hospital hallway and in the noisy lounge. Every entry was so detailed, so rigorous, so professional, it was staggering. It didn't look like a high school student's notes. It looked like an academic thesis on standardized testing. At the end of the article, I wrote, "Doubt is a right, but I paved this road with every second of my hard work and sweat. If anyone has any concrete evidence that I cheated, please report it to the Board of Education or the police. Otherwise, shut up." Also, at Northbridge PD, I believe this large-scale, coordinated slander campaign is a criminal act. This post was a nuclear bomb. It detonated across the internet. Holy yes, look at these notes. My brain hurts just looking at them. This guy is a god. Is this a high school kid? This is a research paper, studying in a lounge, in a hospital. I'm crying. This is a true story of triumph against adversity. Where are the haters now? Does your face hurt? Yes, report them. Investigate the people who started these rumors. The tide of public opinion turned 180 degrees in an instant. Hashtag 73. The troll accounts that have been the loudest went silent, deleting their posts. The anonymous classmates and the janitor were exposed as frauds, their stories full of holes. They were even doxxed by internet sleuths who discovered they all had connections to Vance family businesses. The public mockery and outrage pushed my reputation to an unprecedented height. The school immediately reinstated the scholarship award ceremony. The principal called me personally to apologize and promised to pursue legal action against the slanderers. The Board of Education and the police also issued statements, promising a full investigation into the defamation campaign. I stared at the screen, at the flood of supportive comments, my eyes cold. Ethan Vance, your last-ditch effort not only failed to hurt me, but it also became the very thing that elevated me to legendary status, and the final nail in the coffin of your and your family's reputation. The day of the award ceremony, the school auditorium was decked out in festive decorations. A huge red banner read, "Congratulations to Leo Carter, state scholarship champion. The hall was packed. The media had their cameras ready, flashes popping constantly. I was in a waiting room backstage, wearing an ill-fitting suit the school had provided. I was holding the speech I was supposed to give, but my eyes were on the world outside. The knot of tension in my gut hadn't loosened. It had tightened. Ethan was too quiet. This wasn't like him. A rabid dog, cornered, with his entire world collapsing, wouldn't just quietly wait for the end. He had to be planning one last, insane attack. My phone vibrated. A blocked number. My heart skipped a beat. I answered. It wasn't Ethan's voice. It was Isabella's, screaming, crying, struggling. "Leo, help me. Don't come. He has a—" Her voice was cut off, replaced by a muffled sob. Then Ethan's voice, hoarse, crazed, and panting, came on the line. "Leo, you bastard. Did you hear that? Your woman, and your two unborn little bastards, are with me." My pupils constricted. This never happened in my past life. A ripple effect? My phone buzzed again. 2 picture messages. One was of Isabella, tied to a chair. Her clothes were torn, her face stained with tears, her mouth covered with duct tape, her eyes filled with terror. The other was a blurry sonogram, with a note, "Early pregnancy, twins." Surprised? Ha ha ha. Ethan's laughter was a distorted, insane cackle. "One body, 3 lives, you're a lucky man, Leo. Now get your ass to the abandoned steel mill on the west side. Alone. If you call the cops, if you tell anyone, I will chop them into pieces and feed them to the dogs. You have 30 minutes. For every minute you're late, I cut off one of her fingers." The line went dead. A knock on the door. A student council member poked his head in. "Leo, sir, the ceremony starts in 30 minutes. The principal wanted to make sure you were ready." "I know," I said, my voice unnervingly calm. The door closed. I stood frozen. My mind was racing. Save her. Going alone was suicide. Ethan had nothing left to lose. He just wanted to drag me to hell with him. "Don't go." Isabella's life meant little to me, but the children. They were innocent, and Ethan would torture them in the most horrific way. It would be a nightmare that would haunt me for the rest of my life. The awards ceremony, my future, it all seemed so pale and meaningless in the face of this bloody threat. I didn't hesitate. I made my decision. I would save them, and I would utterly destroy this rabid dog. I sent a pre-written text message to Detective Volkov. It contained only a set of coordinates, West Side, Steel Mill, and one photo, Isabella kidnapped. Then, I took out my main phone and turned on live location sharing. After that, I took a deep breath, plastered a look of anxiety and panic on my face, and burst out of the waiting room. I rushed to the student council member. "I have a family emergency. I have to go now. Tell the principal I'm sorry. I might not make it back for the ceremony." And without waiting for a reply, I ran out the back door of the auditorium, jumped into the car the school had assigned me, and floored it, heading west. The car weaved through traffic, one hand on the wheel, the other making sure my phone was on the dashboard mount, its location signal broadcasting. "Ethan Vance, you made one final mistake. You shouldn't have touched my family, and you shouldn't have given me a reason to utterly annihilate the last remnants of your power. The steel mill. Good. It's remote. It's empty. A perfect place for your grave. The abandoned steel mill on the west side. Its massive, rusted frame clawed at the gray sky like the skeleton of a dead behemoth. Weeds grew everywhere. It was eerily silent, except for the wind whistling through the broken windows of the main factory building. I parked the car a good distance away and approached on foot. In my hand, I clutched a flashbang grenade I had gotten from Volkov for self-defense. My heart beat steadily. My feet crunched on the gravel. My eyes scanned every possible sniper perch, every dark corner. I knew Ethan and his last loyal men were inside, like a spider in the center of its web. My phone rang again. The same number. "Are you here, you bastard?" Ethan's voice was a hoarse, excited shriek. "Get inside. The main workshop, and don't try anything funny. I'm watching you." I took a deep breath, making my own voice sound panicked and rushed. "I'm here. Don't hurt her. I'm coming in." I pushed open the heavy, creaking iron door. The cavernous workshop was dark, smelling of rust and old grease. Isabella was tied to a rusty iron chair, her mouth still taped shut. When she saw me, she let out a muffled terrified cry and shook her head frantically. Ethan stood behind her, one hand tangled in her hair, the other holding a gleaming knife to her throat. He looked even more unhinged than before, his eyes sunken, his face flushed with a sick, feverish energy. 4 men in black tactical gear were spread out in an arc, their weapons pointed at me. "On your knees! Crawl to me!" Ethan sneered, pressing the knife harder, drawing a thin line of blood on Isabella's pale neck. I stood my ground, my eyes quickly assessing the situation. "It's over, Ethan." My voice was calm, as if stating a fact. "The police are on their way. You can't escape." "The police?" Ethan laughed maniacally. "Let them come. They can collect your body. They can die with us." Before he could finish, I dove sideways, behind a dilapidated control panel. At the same time, I hurled the flashbang grenade into the air toward Ethan's right. Boom! A deafening bang and a blinding white light exploded, illuminating the entire workshop. "H, my eyes! Watch out!" The gunmen flinched, instinctively closing their eyes and turning away. Ethan himself was startled, his grip on the knife loosening. Now, I used the brief moment of chaos to spring from behind the control panel. I sprinted toward the control room of a massive overhead crane. Ping! 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 Bullets chewed up the rusty steel around me. I threw myself into the control room and slammed my hand down on the dusty control panel, hitting random buttons. Screech! The massive hook of the overhead crane, now out of control, came plummeting down, right toward the gunman. "Move!" they shouted, scrambling out of the way. The chaos intensified, and at that exact moment, from outside, the sound of sirens loud and fast closing in. "Police! Everyone inside, drop your weapons." Volkov's voice, amplified by a bullhorn, boomed like thunder, followed by the sound of a gate being rammed open and the heavy thud of tactical boots. "Shit! They're really here!" one of the gunmen yelled. "Boss, what do we do?" Ethan panicked. He never expected the police to arrive so quickly and in such force. "Stop them! Hold them off!" he screamed, dragging Isabella backward by her hair. Using her as a human shield, tried to escape deeper into the factory. His men tried to use the old machinery as cover and fight back. But against a heavily armed, well-trained SWAT team, their resistance was pathetic. Pop! Pop! After a few precise shots and shouted commands, their resistance crumbled. The gunmen were taken down one by one. "Ethan Vance, you are surrounded. Release the hostage." Volkov, his gun raised, advanced with his team, his voice like ice. "Stay back. Get any closer, and I'll kill her." Ethan screamed, backed into a corner, his knife pressed hard against Isabella's carotid artery. Isabella was turning blue from fear and lack of air. A standoff. I slowly stood up from behind the control panel, dusted myself off, and walked toward Volkov. Several guns immediately swiveled toward me. "Leo, are you okay?" Volkov spared me a quick glance. "I'm fine," I said, looking at the cornered Ethan. My eyes held no triumph, only a cold, detached emptiness. "Ethan," I said, my voice echoing in the vast space. "Look at you, a pathetic rabid dog. Shut up. This is all your fault, all of it." Ethan's emotions spiraled out of control, his arm trembling. "My fault," I scoffed. "You and your filthy family walked this path yourselves. You think you've won?" Ethan shrieked. "Even if I die, she's coming with me." As his emotions peaked, his arm tensed, lifting the knife slightly. Volkov's eyes narrowed. He seized the opportunity. Bang! A single precise gunshot. The bullet whizzed through the air and struck Ethan's wrist. "Ah!" Ethan let out a piercing scream. The knife clattered to the floor. At the same moment, 2 SWAT officers lunged forward, tackling him to the ground and cuffing him. Isabella collapsed and was quickly helped up by a female officer, who untied her. She clutched her throat, sobbing and gasping for air. "Search this place, top to bottom," Volkov commanded. His team spread out. Soon, from a hidden elevator shaft in the back of the workshop, they made a shocking discovery. The elevator led to a subterranean level, a small but fully equipped drug lab. Clearly, one of the Vance family's last remaining strongholds. "Sir, we found a drug manufacturing facility. 3 technicians in custody." Volkov's face was grim. The Vance family. Truly, There is no evil they wouldn't stoop to. Ethan was dragged to his feet, his wrist bleeding, his face a ghostly white. He stared at me with pure, undiluted hatred. "Leo Carter, I will haunt you from my grave." I walked up to him and looked down at his broken form. "Ethan, you don't deserve a grave. You deserve to rot in a prison cell, forgotten by everyone. Your era is over." I said my piece, and without another look at him, I turned and walked toward the light of the entrance. The sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the filthy, abandoned factory. Behind me, I could hear Ethan's desperate, broken screams and the commands of the police as they led him away. The smell of antiseptic in the hospital erases everything else. The private room was quiet. Isabella was propped up in bed, her face pale. Her wrists and neck were bandaged, but she had calmed down. The doctor said the babies were fine for now, but she had suffered a severe shock and needed complete bed rest. When she saw me, her eyes lit up with a complex, intense emotion. The fear of a survivor, a deep-seated dependence, and something else, a blind, overwhelming wave of feeling. "Leo." Her voice was a raw whisper. She tried to sit up. "Don't move." My tone was flat. I walked over and placed a bag of fruit I had bought on the nightstand. The gesture was perfunctory, polite. A strange silence filled the room, broken only by the beep of the heart monitor. She stared at me like a drowning person clinging to a piece of driftwood. "Thank you. You saved me again. And the babies." Tears welled up in her eyes. "If it wasn't for you, we would have." It was nothing. I cut her off, my gaze falling on her still flat stomach. "I did it for them." Isabella froze, the tears suspended on her cheeks, looking lost. She seemed to have expected a different response. After a few seconds of silence, she seemed to gather all her courage. She looked up at me, her eyes burning, her voice trembling but firm. "Leo, I know I was wrong before. So wrong. But now I know who really cares about me. Let me stay with you. I'll do anything to repay you. I'll raise our children, and we can." "Isabella," I interrupted her again, my voice devoid of emotion, as if stating a fact about a stranger. "I saved you, but not because I have any feelings for you. I saved you because those are my children. That's all." I watched her face drain of all color. I continued, drawing the line with the clearest, cruelest words possible. "If you have any unrealistic fantasies about us, you should get rid of them now. You can have the children. I will fulfill my responsibilities as a father. But between you and me, there will be nothing else. If you insist on staying with me," I paused, my eyes cold, "I can agree to provide a place for you to live. But nothing more. No official status, no affection, no attention. Nothing. Think carefully." My words were like icicles, piercing the warm, hopeful bubble she had just started to form. She trembled violently, her lips quivering, and fat tears rolled down her cheeks. But this time, it wasn't the same fragile weeping as before. It was the tears of someone who had been deeply hurt, but had found a strange, defiant clarity. She looked at me for a long time. The infatuation and dependence in her eyes slowly faded, replaced by a painful, yet incredibly determined, light. She raised her hand and fiercely wiped away her tears. "I've thought it over," she said, her voice still hoarse but steady. "I don't want anything from you. Not your name. Not your love. I don't expect anything anymore. I owe you. I will pay my debt. Just let me stay. Let me watch our children grow up. That's all." Her answer surprised me. I had expected a breakdown, a tantrum, a refusal to accept it. Not this. This resigned, humble persistence. I looked at her for a few seconds. I saw no calculation in her eyes, only the calm of someone who had hit rock bottom and survived. "As you wish," I said, looking away, the conversation over. "Get some rest." I turned and left the room, without a backward glance. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing off the woman and her complicated emotions, and sealing off all unnecessary entanglements. The children were my responsibility. She was not. My road ahead was long and narrow. There was no room for excess baggage. This was for the best. The award ceremony was rescheduled for the next day. The auditorium was even more festive, buzzing with energy. The lights, the applause, the flowers, the fawning smiles. It all felt distant, as if happening behind a thick pane of glass. I stood backstage, my mind miles away, at City General Hospital. Today was not just my coronation. It was my grandfather's rebirth. A donor liver had been found. The surgery was scheduled for this morning, at the same time as my award ceremony. I had arranged it this way. I wanted my victory to be the best possible gift for him as he went into surgery. The ceremony dragged on. The principal's speech, the guest speakers, the student representative. Every second was an eternity. Finally, and now, please welcome to the stage our state scholarship champion, Leo Carter, to receive his award and give his acceptance speech. Amid thunderous applause, I walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding. I took a deep breath, my eyes scanning the crowd, but I wasn't really seeing anyone. My thoughts were all directed toward the hospital. Just as I was about to speak, my phone vibrated violently in my pocket. It was a special ringtone I had set for the hospital caretaker. An icy dread shot up my spine. Forgetting where I was, I pulled out my phone and answered it in front of everyone. "Hello." The caretaker's panicked, tearful voice came through the line. "Leo, it's bad. There's a problem with your grandfather's surgery. His heart stopped. The doctors need you to come sign the consent forms now. Hurry." His voice was loud enough to be faintly heard by the front rows. The auditorium fell silent. Everyone stared at me, shocked. The world went quiet. The only sound was the frantic pounding of my own heart. I didn't care about anything else. I shoved the stunned host aside. Like a cornered animal, I bolted off the stage, pushing through the crowd, running like a madman out of the auditorium. A wave of confusion and gasps followed me. I didn't hear any of it. My world had narrowed to one single point. The hospital. I flagged down a taxi. I screamed at the driver to hurry. I told him to run the red lights. My mind was a blank slate of terror. The only image was the memory from my last life. My grandfather, curled up in agony, dying from the pain. I had changed my destiny. But could I change his? No. I refused to believe it. I burst into the surgical wing of the hospital. The overwhelming smell of disinfectant and death hit me. The lead surgeon and several nurses were waiting, their faces grim. They were holding a consent form. "Leo, you're here," the surgeon said, his words rushed. He went into cardiac arrest on the table. "We got him back, but he's extremely unstable. The transplant surgery is now incredibly high risk. If we continue, his heart could stop again, and he won't make it off the table. If we stop, we can't transplant the liver, and in his current condition..." The surgeon didn't have to finish. The meaning was brutally clear. Continue, and he might die immediately. Stop, and he will certainly die. The choice, cold and cruel, was mine. The air in the hallway felt like it was solidifying. ####83. Every second that passed was a second of my grandfather's life slipping away. I leaned against the cold wall, my fingers digging into the plaster. My body was trembling from the immense fear and pressure. All the difficult choices from this life and the last combined were nothing compared to the agony of this moment. But I knew I didn't have time to hesitate. I looked up at the surgeon, my eyes bloodshot. My voice, when it came out, was a raw but strangely calm whisper. "Doctor, I trust you. Please continue the surgery. I will take full responsibility for whatever happens." I signed my name on the damn form. The pen almost tore through the paper. The surgeon gave me a long, hard look, nodded once, and rushed back into the operating room. The red light above the door came on again. I collapsed onto the bench outside, all my strength gone. I buried my head in my hands, my nails digging into my palms. Grandpa, he had collected cans to pay for my school supplies. He had eaten plain bread so I could have meat. He had warmed my cold feet with his own hands in the winter. Grandpa, hold on. I'm the state champion. We have money now. Our good life is just beginning. You have to watch me. Watch me get married and have children. Watch me make you proud. Please. I prayed over and over like a madman. Time had never moved so slowly, so cruelly. Every minute was a century. The operating room door would occasionally swing open, a nurse rushing in or out, their face a grim mask, not even glancing my way. Hope and despair battled with every swing of the door. I don't know how much time passed. It felt like an eternity. The door opened again. ####84. The lead surgeon walked out, his body slumped with exhaustion. He pulled down his mask, his face a mixture of fatigue and profound relief. The surgery was a success. The new liver is in, and his heart function has stabilized for now. We'll monitor him for the next 24 hours. If there are no complications, he's out of the woods. What? My mind went blank. My body swayed, and a nurse had to steady me. A massive, indescribable wave of joy and relief, born from the depths of terror, crashed over me, breaking down all my defenses. Tears, hot and silent, streamed down my face. I wasn't crying. I was just leaking, my whole body shaking. They let me put on scrubs and go in to see him for a moment. My grandfather lay on the bed, tubes everywhere, his face as pale as paper. But his chest was rising and falling in a steady rhythm. I walked over, my hands trembling, and took his cold, calloused hand in mine. I pressed it to my tear-streaked face. "Grandpa," I choked out, unable to say anything else. 1,000 words were stuck in my throat, but I knew he could feel it. Changing fate. It was possible. This time I had caught it. I had held on. In the prison visiting room, the air was cold, smelling of disinfectant and despair. A thick pane of bulletproof glass separated two worlds. I sat on one side, my expression calm. On the table in front of me were several items. A gold-embossed certificate, Northbridge State Scholarship Champion, a simple, heavy ceramic urn, a clean dog bowl, and a thick manila envelope. Ethan Vance was escorted in by 2 guards. He was wearing an orange prison jumpsuit, his head shaved. His face was a pale, bloated white from lack of sunlight. His eyes were vacant, lifeless, like a puppet with its strings cut. Until he saw me. That emptiness was instantly filled with a venomous, insane hatred and disbelief. #, 85. He tried to lunge at the glass, but was restrained by the guards. He roared like a caged animal, his voice a distorted, muffled scream. "Leo Carter, you bastard. How dare you come here? Why aren't you dead?" I looked at him, my face a blank mask, and picked up the receiver. He was forced to do the same. "You look well," I said. My voice, through the receiver, was calmly cruel. "I'll kill you. I'll kill you." He slammed his fist against the glass. I ignored him and slowly picked up the champion certificate. I unfolded it and pressed it against the glass, the side with my name and score facing him. The red seal, the perfect score, my name, it was like a branding iron searing into his eyes. His scream stopped. His eyes bulged, threatening to pop from their sockets. His breathing became ragged, and he stared at the certificate, his whole body shaking. 1580. "Champion," I said flatly. "The one thing you always wanted and could never have." Next, I picked up the ceramic urn. My movements were slow, deliberate. Ethan's gaze followed it. I opened the lid. Inside was a grayish-white powder. I looked at him and said, each word a death knell, "This is your father. He overdosed. It wasn't a pretty sight. This is all that was left after the cremation." Ethan's pupils constricted. He didn't seem to understand what I was doing. Then he watched as I picked up the dog bowl. I slowly, carefully poured the ashes from the urn into the bowl. Then I gestured to Isabella, who had been standing silently in the corner. She led forward a skinny, stray dog she had found. I pointed to the dog bowl. The dog trotted over and began to happily lick it clean. The sound of its tongue scraping against the ceramic was loud in the silent room. #, 86 Aya. An inhuman, terrified, broken scream ripped from Ethan's throat. He shot up from his chair as if electrocuted, then collapsed back down. He clawed at his own hair, his eyes bulging and bloodshot. No, you can't. That's MY. He almost screamed that it was his father's ashes. The ultimate terror and humiliation consumed him. The guards held him down. I watched him, my face a coal mask. When he had exhausted himself and was just panting, staring at me as if I were the devil himself, I gently reached out and placed my hand on Isabella's slightly rounded stomach. Isabella flinched but didn't move away. "Your fiancé?" My tone was flat. "The babies are healthy. Twins. They're mine." Ethan's gaze shot to Isabella's stomach, then back to me. His lips trembled, but no sound came out. Only a wheezing, broken sound from his throat. Betrayal, humiliation, defeat. All of it converged on that pregnant belly, the final straw that broke him. Finally, I picked up the thick envelope. I pulled out a stack of photos and reports and pressed them against the glass. There were crime scene photos of a dozen teenage girls and detailed autopsy reports describing horrific abuse and murder. This was the evidence Volkov had dug up based on the vague clues I had given him. Ethan's deepest, darkest secret, enough to guarantee a death sentence. My voice was as cold as a grave. Detective Volkov asked me to show them to you. He said the legal process is almost complete. I raised my hand, forming it into the shape of a gun. I aimed it at Ethan's ashen, frozen face. I slowly squeezed my imaginary trigger. Bang! Ethan froze completely. Hashtag 87, all the madness, the hatred, the screaming vanished from his face, replaced by a profound, cold, indescribable terror. His pupils dilated, as if he were seeing the very gates of hell. His body began to shake violently. His teeth chattered. A dark, foul-smelling liquid trickled down his pant leg and puddled on the floor. His mouth was open, but no sound came out, only a choked gurgle. His eyes were completely vacant, filled with nothing but absolute despair. He was broken, spiritually, physically, utterly destroyed. I put down the receiver and stood up. I took one last look at the twitching, broken figure, now curled into a fetal position. I said nothing more. I picked up the empty urn, which had only contained pig bone ash. I took the dog's leash, and with Isabella, I turned and left. The door to the visiting room closed behind me, sealing in the absolute dead silence. The sun was bright. I took a deep breath. The debts from my past life had been repaid. With interest. Ethan Vance, you will spend the rest of your short life in terror, waiting for your execution. That is the most perfect punishment. The award ceremony was postponed for me again. The lights in the auditorium were even brighter than before. The crowd was even larger. The reporters' cameras were poised, waiting. This time, there were no interruptions, no emergencies. I stood in the center of the stage, in a suit that was still a little too big, but was clean and pressed. A large red ribbon was pinned to my chest. In my hands, I held a giant novelty check for $100,000, the scholarship prize. In the front row, center, sat my grandfather. Hashtag 88. He was wearing a clean, new suit. His gray hair was neatly combed. He was still pale from the surgery, but he sat up straight, his old eyes shining with excitement and a pride that was impossible to describe. His hands, resting on his knees, trembled slightly. The principal's long, flowery speech finally ended. The microphone was handed to me. Every eye, every camera focused on me. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. I took a deep breath, my eyes scanning the crowd, but I was looking past them, toward the hospital. Just as I was about to speak, my pocket vibrated. It was the special ringtone for the hospital caretaker. A cold dread shot up my spine. Forgetting where I was, I pulled out my phone and answered it in front of everyone. Hello. The caretaker's panicked, tearful voice came through the line. Leo, it's bad. There's a problem with your grandfather's surgery. His heart stopped. The doctors need you to come sign the consent forms now. Hurry. His voice was loud enough to be faintly heard by the front rows. The auditorium fell silent. Everyone stared at me, shocked. The world went quiet. The only sound was the frantic pounding of my own heart. I didn't care about anything else. I shoved the stunned host aside. Like a cornered animal, I bolted off the stage, pushing through the crowd, running like a madman out of the auditorium. A wave of confusion and gasps followed me. I didn't hear any of it. My world had narrowed to one single point. The hospital. I flagged down a taxi. I screamed at the driver to hurry. I told him to run the red lights. My mind was a blank slate of terror. The only image was the memory from my last life. My grandfather, curled up in agony, dying from the pain. I had changed my destiny. But could I change his? No. I refused to believe it. I burst into the surgical wing of the hospital. The overwhelming smell of disinfectant and death hit me. The lead surgeon and several nurses were waiting, their faces grim. They were holding a consent form. Leo, you're here, the surgeon said. His words rushed. He went in a cardiac arrest on the table. We got him back, but he's extremely unstable. The transplant surgery is now incredibly high risk. If we continue, his heart could stop again, and he won't make it off the table. If we stop, we can't transplant the liver, and in his current condition, the surgeon didn't have to finish. The meaning was brutally clear. Continue, and he might die immediately. Stop, and he will certainly die. The choice, cold and cruel, was mine. The air in the hallway felt like it was solidifying. Every second that passed was a second of my grandfather's life slipping away. I leaned against the cold wall, my fingers digging into the plaster. My body was trembling from the immense fear and pressure. All the difficult choices from this life and the last combined were nothing compared to the agony of this moment. But I knew I didn't have time to hesitate. I looked up at the surgeon, my eyes bloodshot. My voice, when it came out, was a raw but strangely calm whisper. "Doctor, I trust you. Please continue the surgery. I will take full responsibility for whatever happens." I signed my name on the damn form. The pen almost tore through the paper. The surgeon gave me a long, hard look, nodded once, and rushed back into the operating room. The red light above the door came on again. I collapsed onto the bench outside, all my strength gone. I buried my head in my hands, my nails digging into my palms. Grandpa, he had collected cans to pay for my school supplies. He had eaten plain bread so I could have meat. He had warmed my cold feet with his own hands in the winter. The memories, like a warm current and a sharp knife, flooded my heart. "Grandpa, hold on. I'm the state champion. We have money now. Our good life is just beginning. You have to watch me. Watch me get married and have children. Watch me make you proud. Please." I prayed over and over like a madman. Time had never moved so slowly, so cruelly. Every minute was a century. The operating room door would occasionally swing open, a nurse rushing in or out, their face a grim mask, not even glancing my way. Hope and despair battled with every swing of the door. I don't know how much time passed. It felt like an eternity. The door opened again. The lead surgeon walked out, his body slumped with exhaustion. He pulled down his mask, his face a mixture of fatigue and profound relief. The surgery was a success. The new liver is in, and his heart function has stabilized for now. We'll monitor him for the next 24 hours. If there are no complications, he's out of the woods. What? My mind went blank. My body swayed, and a nurse had to steady me. A massive, indescribable wave of joy and relief, born from the depths of terror, crashed over me, breaking down all my defenses. Tears, hot and silent, streamed down my face. I wasn't crying. I was just leaking, my whole body shaking. They only put on scrubs and go in to see him for a moment. My grandfather lay on the bed, tubes everywhere, his face as pale as paper. But his chest was rising and falling in a steady rhythm. I walked over, my hands trembling, and took his cold, calloused hand in mine. I pressed it to my tear-streaked face. "Grandpa," I choked out, unable to say anything else. 1,000 words were stuck in my throat, but I knew he could feel it. Changing fate. It was possible. This time I had caught it. I had held on. The award ceremony was held again a day later. The auditorium was even more festive, buzzing with energy. The lights, the applause, the flowers, the fawning smiles. It all felt distant. I stood on stage, my mind miles away, at City General Hospital. Today was not just my coronation. It was my grandfather's rebirth. A donor liver had been found. The surgery was scheduled for this morning, at the same time as my award ceremony. I had arranged it this way. I wanted my victory to be the best possible gift for him. The ceremony dragged on. Finally, it was my turn. Amid thunderous applause, I walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding. I took a deep breath, my eyes scanning the crowd, but I wasn't really seeing anyone. My thoughts were all directed toward the hospital. Just as I was about to speak, my phone vibrated violently. It was the special ringtone for the hospital caretaker. An icy dread shot up my spine. Forgetting where I was, I pulled out my phone and answered it. "Hello." The caretaker's panicked, tearful voice came through the line. "Leo, it's bad. There's a problem with your grandfather's surgery. His heart stopped. The doctors need you to come sign the consent forms now. Hurry." His voice was loud enough to be faintly heard. The auditorium fell silent. Everyone stared at me. The world went quiet. The only sound was the frantic pounding of my own heart. I didn't care about anything else. I shoved the stunned host aside and bolted off the stage, running like a madman out of the auditorium. A wave of confusion followed me. I didn't hear it. My world had narrowed to one single point: the hospital. I burst into the surgical wing. The overwhelming smell of disinfectant and death hit me. The lead surgeon and several nurses were waiting, their faces grim. "Leo, you're here," the surgeon said, his words rushed. He went into cardiac arrest on the table. We got him back, but he's extremely unstable. The transplant surgery is now incredibly high risk. If we continue, his heart could stop again. If we stop, we can't transplant the liver, and in his current condition, the meaning was brutally clear. Continue, and he might die immediately. Stop, and he will certainly die. The choice, cold and cruel, was mine. I leaned against the cold wall, my fingers digging into the plaster. I knew I didn't have time to hesitate. I looked up at the surgeon, my eyes bloodshot. My voice, when it came out, was a raw but strangely calm whisper. "Doctor, I trust you. Please continue the surgery. I will take full responsibility for whatever happens." I signed my name on the form. The pen almost tore through the paper. The surgeon nodded and rushed back into the operating room. The red light came on again. I collapsed onto the bench outside, all my strength gone. "Grandpa, hold on. I'm the state champion. We have money now. Our good life is just beginning. Please," I prayed over and over. Time had never moved so slowly. It felt like an eternity. The door opened again. The lead surgeon walked out, his body slumped with exhaustion. He pulled down his mask, his face a mixture of fatigue and profound relief. The surgery was a success. The new liver is in, and his heart function has stabilized. If there are no complications in the next 24 hours, he's out of the woods. My mind went blank. My body swayed, and a nurse had to steady me. A massive, indescribable wave of joy and relief crashed over me. Tears, hot and silent, streamed down my face. They let me go in to see him. My grandfather lay on the bed, tubes everywhere, his face pale, but his chest was rising and falling. I walked over and took his cold, calloused hand in mine. I pressed it to my tear-streaked face. "Grandpa," I choked out. 1,000 words were stuck in my throat, but I knew he could feel it. Changing fate. It was possible. This time I had held on. The prison visiting room. The air was cold. A thick pane of bulletproof glass separated two worlds. I sat on one side, my expression calm. On the table were a gold-embossed certificate, a ceramic urn, a clean dog bowl, and a thick manila envelope. Ethan Vance was escorted in. He was wearing an orange prison jumpsuit, his head shaved. His face was a pale, bloated white. His eyes were vacant. Until he saw me, that emptiness was instantly filled with a venomous, insane hatred. He tried to lunge at the glass, but was restrained. He roared like a caged animal. "Leo Carter, you bastard! How dare you come here?" I picked up the receiver. "You look well," I said. "I'll kill you." He slammed his fist against the glass. I ignored him and slowly picked up the champion certificate. I pressed it against the glass. The red seal, the perfect score, my name, it was like a branding iron searing into his eyes. His scream stopped. His whole body shook. 1580. "Champion," I said flatly. "The one thing you always wanted and could never have." Next, I picked up the ceramic urn. I opened the lid. Inside was a grayish-white powder. "This is your father," I said. "He overdosed. This is all that was left." Ethan's pupils constricted. Then he watched as I picked up the dog bowl and slowly poured the ashes into it. I gestured to Isabella, who had been standing silently in the corner. She led forward a skinny stray dog. I pointed to the dog bowl. The dog trotted over and began to happily lick it clean. "Ea!" An inhuman, terrified scream ripped from Ethan's throat. He shot up from his chair, then collapsed back down, clawing at his own hair. "No, no, you can't," he shrieked. I watched him, my face a cold mask. When he had exhausted himself, I gently reached out and placed my hand on Isabella's slightly rounded stomach. "Your fiancé," my tone was flat. "The babies are healthy. Twins. They're mine." Ethan's gaze shot to Isabella's stomach, then back to me. His lips trembled, but no sound came out. Betrayal, humiliation, defeat. All of it converged on that pregnant belly, the final straw. Finally, I picked up the thick envelope. I pulled out a stack of photos and reports and pressed them against the glass. Crime scene photos of a dozen teenage girls and detailed autopsy reports describing horrific abuse and murder. This was the evidence Volkov had dug up, enough to guarantee a death sentence. My voice was as cold as a grave. Detective Volkov asked me to show them to you. He said the legal process is almost complete. I raised my hand, forming it into the shape of a gun. I aimed it at Ethan's ashen, frozen face. I slowly squeezed my imaginary trigger. Bang! Ethan froze completely. All the madness vanished from his face, replaced by a profound, cold, indescribable terror. His pupils dilated. His body began to shake violently. A dark, foul-smelling liquid trickled down his pant leg. His mouth was open, but no sound came out. His eyes were completely vacant, filled with nothing but absolute despair. He was broken. I put down the receiver and stood up. I took one last look at the twitching, broken figure. I picked up the empty urn, which had only contained pig bone ash, took the dog's leash, and with Isabella, I turned and left. The door to the visiting room closed behind me. The sun was bright. I took a deep breath. The debts from my past life had been repaid. With interest. Ethan Vance, you will spend the rest of your short life in terror, waiting for your execution. That is the most perfect punishment. The award ceremony was held again. The auditorium was even more festive. This time, there were no interruptions. I stood in the center of the stage, in a suit that was still a little too big, but was clean and pressed. A large red ribbon was pinned to my chest. In my hands, I held a giant novelty check for $100,000. In the front row, center, sat my grandfather. He was wearing a clean, new suit. He was still pale from his surgery, but he sat up straight, his old eyes shining with a pride that was impossible to describe. The principal's long, flowery speech finally ended. The microphone was handed to me. Every eye, every camera focused on me. I took a deep breath, my eyes scanning the crowd. I saw sincere congratulations, and in the corners, the hidden glints of jealousy and contempt. I could even hear the whispers from the back. Lucky bastard. Probably got special treatment. Just some kid from the projects. The voices were small, but sharp. I gripped the microphone and began to speak, my voice calm but powerful. Thank you to the school, to my teachers. After the formalities, my tone shifted. I know a lot of people say that it's impossible for someone from my background to succeed. They say I'm standing here because of luck, because of a scholarship, because of something else. The auditorium grew quiet. The whispers stopped. And in some ways, they're right. I continued, my voice steady. I come from the projects, the kind of place most of you only see in movies. My father was a drug addict, my mother a gambling addict. My grandfather raised me by collecting cans and bottles. A low murmur of shock went through the crowd. My grandfather's eyes reddened. I came to this school to pay off my parents' debts. I've faced prejudice. I've been framed for things I didn't do. I've been nearly expelled. I've had my own parents try to sell me to a living hell for money. I've faced down gang members with knives, and I've watched my only family member nearly die because I couldn't afford to pay his medical bills. My voice remained calm, but each word was a hammer blow, striking the hearts of everyone in the room. The auditorium was completely silent now, my voice echoing in the vast space. But what I want to say is this. I raised my voice, my eyes sharp as a blade, sweeping over the crowd. Greatness isn't born. It's forged in fire. It's clawing your way out of the mud when everyone else is trying to bury you. It's staying sane when everyone is calling you a liar. It's getting back up every single time you're knocked down. It's when everyone in the world wants you to die. You choose to live, and to live better than all of them. I was almost shouting the last few lines, filled with the pain and defiance of 2 lifetimes. Boom! The auditorium was silent for a second. Then, an explosion of applause, a tidal wave of sound that shook the room. Countless people jumped to their feet, clapping, their eyes wet. Even those who had been jealous were now looking at me with a new, complicated respect. The cameras flashed wildly, focusing on me, and on my grandfather in the front row, who was now openly weeping with pride. My speech was powerful, shocking, and inspiring. When the applause died down, I spoke again, my voice now quiet but firm. Today, I received this scholarship money. It's incredibly important to me. It's the money that saved my grandfather's life. But I know there are many others out there, just like me, or in even worse situations, who are struggling, who are just looking for a chance. So I have decided. Hashtag 90, I held up the giant check. To donate $50,000 to establish the Phoenix Fund, to provide scholarships for students at this school and across the city who have the grades, but not the means. It's not a lot of money, but I hope it can be a spark. The words had barely left my lips when the auditorium erupted again. The applause and cheers were deafening. Donate $50,000 for a student from his background. That was an unimaginable sum, and he was giving half of it away. The camera flashes were a solid wall of white light. The principal and the other administrators, after their initial shock, were beaming with pride and approval. In that moment, any lingering doubts, any whispers of contempt were utterly destroyed by this act of genuine charity. The champion from the projects, a young man of true character, a real inspiration. He had earned all the titles, all the praise. I bowed. When I straightened up, my eyes met my grandfather's. He was crying, but his back was straight, and he was clapping for me, his old calloused hands making a soft, steady rhythm. It was a silent applause, but it was louder than all the noise in the room. The cameras caught the moment, a close-up of my grandfather's tear-streaked, proud face and my own, my eyes also wet, but my expression full of unshakable resolve. Countless people watching teared up at the sight. The ceremony ended in a triumphant crescendo. As the crowd began to disperse, I walked back to the podium to gather my things. A copy of John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath lay open on the lectern. It had been a prop for my speech. A handwritten note was sticking out from between the pages. The camera zoomed in for one final shot, focusing on the note. On it, in my own, strong handwriting, were 2 lines. You can be beaten, you can be broken, but only if you let go. The lights faded to black, leaving only the book and the note on the empty stage. Like a final word on a bygone era, and the first word of a new one.